Which is easiest? You gotta clean it up, right? I don't know. Where's Bill like? Yes. No one. All right.
Good evening. Bear with me tonight. I'm covering for the mayor, and don't expect me to fill his shoes. He's got some big shoes. But good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday night, April 16th, 2013 special town council meeting at Loxahatchee Groves. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Giroux.
Here.
Councilman Goldsmith.
Here.
Councilman Mann.
Here.
Councilman Radford.
Here.
Let the record reflect that Mayor Browning is not present.
All right. We'll stand for the pledge, and please remain standing for the invocation.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, give us guidance and wisdom tonight that the decisions and the discussions we have here tonight will be in the best interest of the residents of Loxahatchee Groves. Lord, we ask a special request that you be with the victims and the families of the victims of the Boston Marathon bombing. Father, another thing, we pray that you have a speedy force that will bring the ones that were responsible for this bombing to justice. We ask all these things in your name. Amen. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion with one change. I'd like to reverse the order of no more than 2 we talked about.
Any other additions or deletions?
I'll second it.
All right, we're going to change number 1 to 2.
Correct. Actually, that's number 1 and 2 of items.
Okay, we need a roll call on that, right? All those in, go ahead.
Goldsmith.
Yes.
Liang.
Yes.
Radford.
Yes.
And Giroux.
Yes. All right, who would like to start with this? Moving on to number 2 on the agenda. Getting roads regularized in some way. Who would like to start?
Vice Mayor, if I can?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we changed the order, and we're talking about number 1 now, which is getting roads regularized in some way. This is an issue that was brought up at your last meeting by Councilmember Goldsmith, and he and I discussed this issue because I was concerned only because I wanted to know what he was referring to regularize, and we talked about it. We kind of put down there an outline form. You know, one of the issues is fee simple ownership and what degree of public use is needed relative to the ownership. It kind of relates to some extent to also number 2. They kind of bleed together, which is the process, timeline, and policy for a road network prioritization. But the first thing, I guess, is the fact that the town, most of the town roads are easements cobbled together to form a public road system, if you will, and not in the town's ownership. And so I guess, Councilman Goldsmith, correct me if I'm wrong, you're trying to ascertain, number 1, the town need to acquire these rights of way in a fee simple ownership, or is there some other degree of public use that will satisfy and get the town where it wants to go for the purposes of future making improvements? That we compare something Yeah. So would that be happy to respond to any questions, or we can do a dialogue?
Any other comments from the council? We've been working with the water control district. Mike, can you help us out here as far as the easiest route to take so that we can
My concern is not so much with the water district road. I read Mike's most recent memo on that subject, though I couldn't make it because I was ill at the last water control meeting. I heard that there was definitely some progress made on turning the roads over. And I spoke to Mr. Ryan on the subject of the fee simple ownership. I was going to get Mark from some of the lands and states, and I was thinking, well, that sounds good. You know, we're going to go through the process and get it done. And so my concern is that we do the same for the non-district town roads, whatever we call these roads. And we've discussed that in the past relative to Marcelo and Compton and Brian. Mark says a lot of this bleeds together, but the form that he has there for Brian, if we're going to require that form for Brian, I would very like to ask, would it therefore be appropriate for us to do that with the rest of them, and then just come up with a process by which to do that? That's the question. I mean, we did come to the result. Basically, all of us asked if you want to be on the road, yes, no. Say yes, then fine. If they say no, then fine. If there's a real mixed decision on the road, then we need to make a decision. I'm sure there's some legal issues that Mike can, fill us in on during that process, but I'd just like to take the first step and move on that process.
Anybody have any questions?
Mike, you want to give us your 2 cents worth on the subject of, I guess, the form that we're talking about, which we developed for Brian?
Well,
And Brian was a little different than any of the other roads, except for Marcelo and Compton, and that it has resurfaced, and we've been trying to resurface it, and the rest of the road in the town, I think.
Well, the form was prepared with Brian in mind, but really it's a form that could be used for any road that the town felt that it wanted to start working on a process to confirm, to confirm in writing, what you guys have declared policy-wise as far as what the town roads are to the gas tax list, which I'm sure will be discussed later on. Compton and Marcella were done where each individual property owner signed a dedication, and it had a legal description that showed exactly what they were dedicating so that the road was there dedicated to the public. Now, it was accepted by the Water Control District, but on behalf of the public. But those dedications are there for a public road, and I thought that was the best model to use, perhaps, at least to put it out there. That's okay. As a point of conversation as far as starting the process of doing more formal documentation of the roads that have been formally used around here for a long, long time. So, the implementation of that form, though, takes time and takes money, because if you saw the paperwork for Compton and Marcella, and you live on those roads, you know that each one was individually done based on a survey and legal description. That takes time and money to do those individual surveys where the road actually lies across somebody's property there, so that they can be sure that what's dedicated is only what the road is, and what we maintain is only what's been dedicated. So, the initial step is that from you all would be, we want to begin the process of selecting some roads and seeing how that system would work, prioritize the roads, because you can't eat the elephant in one bite. You would like to eat this elephant one bite at a time. you've got different situations for different roads. So I think the form is a useful tool to start putting the documentation in place.
As I understand it, we developed the form because we had a situation with 3 roads. 2 of them we were able to address with water control district clear. There was nothing to transfer, no. And we were trying to get those things resurfaced. We tried to be allowed to resurface them or resurface them. So that's where we came up with that form, following a copy of what was done from Marcelo.
Everything county did it.
Yeah. And now we're talking about X number of miles of roads in the town that we would be talking about every single roadway? Or do we adopt what we have been doing, basically say these are town roads, and until somebody tells us they're not town roads, like owners of these properties, then they're considered town roads. And we do it reverse, so we don't end up taking every road and going to every property owner and asking a question or to sign a form.
Well, I think there may be a difference, and maybe management can speak to it, if you're going to maintain roads as opposed to going to OJM, resurface those roads. And the more formal process is probably more suited for those types of expenditures. Grading and maintaining the roads is probably something that you would put on a low priority as far as doing that documentation. But the roads where there's a need or a desire to put resurfacing on, which, as you saw when you did North Road, and you know how much it could cost for the other ones, it's a significant contribution of whether it's gas tax dollars or non-gas tax dollars. It's still significant investment by the town as opposed to routine maintenance or grading. So that's why we bring this up to you. We could do it differently for different roads depending on what how the council wishes to proceed on this specific road.
Well, it seems like we had separate and identified Compton, Marcella, Bryan in previous discussions in one way, and we were geared to the idea that basically they were defined differently as because of this resurfacing that they have or the surface that they have. And we were considering specifically work on Compton, work on Bryan in terms of adding or fixing the surface that they exist. The rest of the discussion on the rest of the town roads, I mean, if we're looking for a regularized way, to me it's, we already have it. We have the designation of the town road and we designate to maintain it. I'm certainly not interested in spending that kind of money in terms of other work that we go into every single road. I don't think it's necessary to just identify the roads as we already have for a number of years. That they're town roads and they can be maintained.
Comes with the obligation of maintaining those roads, and it also comes with the obligation of the folks who have the property on those roads to provide that they are public roads, to not restrict access to those roads. And so it's a two-way. This is, I guess the pun is intended. It's a two-way street on that. For that to be able to work and flourish, and then over the course of time, the town can do a survey of where the road is and record the maps like the district did, of course, of other roads. And that takes some period of time under the statute to do that. So it's also a mixture. Is there something you want to do now? Something you want to do routinely, and after a period of time, confirm it through a survey? If it's something you want to do now and you want to spend significant money doing it, the form that the process that we use for Compton and Marcella, I think, provide a good model for what the town should do.
Your Honor, I mean, one of the reasons why I said 1 and 2 that now reverse order kind of bleed into each other, because the original one that is now 2, we termed that town road system and how to develop it. And there are 3 key aspects to that, which I think we're going to be discussing quite a bit tonight. One is process, one is the timeline, and one is the policy for prioritizing the road network. But I think one of the quandaries that the town management company has always found itself in is that we get a call from somebody town road, asking us to make an improvement. And these town roads are all different based upon the level of treatment they've received over the years. The concern has been, since they are easements cobbled together, and they're not really, they may, the image out there is that they're a public road, but are they really a public road that we should be treating it as a municipality? And I think that's what now 2A, B, and C is all about in conjunction with 1. I think that was the question you asked Councilman Rock in a way, and Mike, is how do we do this? And there are aspects to it that we're going to break up and decide what the town wants to do.
Well, I kind of like the analogy of the elephant. We put on the top of the burner, on the front of the burner, we talked about Compton, Marcella, and me, and Brian, we had asked the Water Control District to do what they could on 2 of the roads. And the third year, trying to move ahead and form work towards Brian, and so we can then resurface it. I think we have to move as quickly as we can on those, and I think we're making progress. Where the Water Control District is working some of that, and we have obviously the Brian Road on our own to move forward. And then we have other items on the list, I think, that fit into that. But I don't know about prioritizing and what does that do to our process if we say that the process is going to be every single road and then have surveys and whatnot. Meanwhile, somebody calls and says, want the work done, and say, well, we haven't gotten to your road yet. So, I mean, I just think it throws a barrier into the process of what we're trying to do, which is maintain all the roads that are in the town and as best we can. And when we have specialties of just resurfacing, it's something we don't have the ability to, have not had the ability to do without some special expenditure of funds. So I think the Compton, Marcel, and Brian, we should move ahead as we have started, complete those, and I guess the other issues that relate to town roads as we have listed tonight. Also, I'm reluctant as a council to move too far, too fast on any individual subjects that I think the mayor should be party to, and in terms of any statement of where we're going. I think we can make some decisions based on things we've already talked about, or I think we can represent the mayor's concerns or issues that he's raised or support that he's expressed. But otherwise, I would, as a courtesy, certainly probably more than courtesy to anything that we have as a policy, that would include this opportunity for him to be here.
I was going to say, if that's the case, we probably should just adjourn and go to the next meeting. But
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
yeah,
It's silly to say that. It's silly.
I mean, that is.
no, but
Okay,
the motion
no,
to adjourn needs
hey,
no second.
We'll keep order.
Well, no.
Okay, no, hey, we'll keep order. You raise your hand, it's your turn to speak, but let's keep order.
You know,
If you got something, hey, if you got something to discuss about what we're talking about, fine, but as far as the digs and stuff,
I didn't. I merely said that we worried about the mayor.
You got something to say?
I certainly do. Bill, your thoughts on the subject of whether or not just the way it is okay?
My professional opinion and my years of experience, there are, as I stated a year ago plus, I have significant concerns contrary to the opinion that the attorneys provide. And part of the work that we've done and what I've seen, the issue is the expenditure of public funds for these items. That is, I've expressed the concern, I stand by that concern, and that's where I'm at. The attorney has his legal opinion, and that's fine, but it has not come forth in writing my knowledge.
Okay.
all right, I've got a comment about this. I agree with Jim wholeheartedly. I didn't like the idea of the mayor not being here tonight. But this is, we're here tonight for discussion and try and get the ball rolling in a positive direction. Prospective easement, okay? I believe that, that the cost would be outrageous, okay? And I don't believe in spending the taxpayer dollars on doing every street. This form, I'm one of the persons that wanted this blank form right here. And the reason we needed the blank form, we've got people on Rhines Road, worse shape, okay? And nobody can find out how it got paved. The county paved it. The water control district didn't have anything to do with it. We can't seem to find any records. I find it hard to believe that the county does not have records of when they paved it, who authorized it, and stuff like that. We've got Bryan's Road, we've got Tompkins Road, and we've got Marcella Road. Okay, they've already got the road down. Okay, they've got the surface there. And we have a hard time trying to get them resurfaced. Okay, now prospective easement means that we've been taking care of these roads for over a certain time period. I believe our time period is getting close where the town can legally claim these roads because we've had an interlocal agreement with the Water Control District to maintain our town roads and stuff for a period of 7 years. I don't know how close it's getting, but I know it's getting close. But to me, it's getting close enough to where I'm not going to support spending a fortune for surveys and trying to get people to give their property over to the town, simple fee or whatever. I don't believe this public right-of-way easement is, Mike, you can help me out here. I don't believe this is considered a simple fee, is it?
It's not.
Okay, all right. Well, now, I personally like this. This is people telling us that they're going to allow us to have the easement so that we can take care of their roads. And personally, that's the way I want to do it now. And I do agree that when we start making decisions, tonight is kind of like a workshop is the way I understood it. In other words, we're going to discuss it, we're going to find out the pros and cons, and then we're going to move on from there. We needed a workshop, but I would have felt more comfortable if all 5 of us would have been here for this. So that's where I stand on number 1. Fee simple ownership. I don't agree with the fee simple ownership. Supposedly the Water Control District are going to turn their roads over to us, Mike, help me out here, with a fee simple ownership. Is that the way we work?
They're going to give us a quit claim, which is whatever they have, they're giving to us.
Okay.
And they have certain types of 80 years of documents that are like the road system cobbled together. But clearly an issue for that making sure that it's open and used by the public. So they're going to give us what they have.
All right. And I think the people in Loxahatchee, if we could get our district roads turned over to the town, become town roads, our main roads, if we could do something with them, that would be a great progress. I do not agree with Bill. Before Underwood management team came to the town of Loxahatchee Groves, we had 2 other management teams. All right, and the first thing that we had to do, and Marge, you were on the council, first thing we had to do to satisfy the League of Cities, and the League of Cities, they pull weight with me. Okay, I don't know if it does with the rest of the council, but the League of Cities pulls weight. They were the ones that told us that we had to do a certain thing to get the gas tax funds. And I do believe they're the ones that distribute them. And they haven't had a problem with us, and we've been at council now for going on over 7 years. Now all of a sudden management team feels like they have a problem with us using our gas tax monies in certain ways. So that's where I stand on that. Supposedly we can hold the gas tax funds for 5 years and then we either use or lose it. So, and our legal says that we can use it. Management says they're not sure about it. So if I've got to pick who I'm going to go with, I'm going to go with legal, and I'm going to try and give the residents of Loxahatchee some type of road service and road maintenance. So that's where I stand on that.
Just so people understand, and I'm not going to make this go on all night because I can see it's really wasting time. Just so people understand, what they're referring to is a statute known as 95-361 in which they will claim ownership of your land. That's what they're going to do. The problem is they don't want to ask you because some of you will say no. So they will instead just say they've been grading it for 7 years. Some of you have been asking for it, and then you lose your land. But I'm not going to sit around here for the rest of this, honestly. I have better things to do with my life. I'm going to go home tonight. That's what's going on.
All right, well, we've still got a
Also, before I leave, I do want to say I support the management team. I don't know why we hired them if we don't want to listen to them.
yeah, we've still got the majority here, so I take it we'd like to carry on.
Sure.
Let's move on to number 2, the road system. And how, oh, I'm sorry. Like I said, I can't fill the mayor's shoes, but I can try. A public comments. Ken, let's start with you. Ken, you've got 2.
Yep.
Okay, 2A and 5.
Your Honor and council members, I've got a question I'm a little bit confused. One, I think for the criteria for what roads should be public and which roads should not be public, in a way has been determined when the U.S. Census was taken. And I believe the criteria for that was, and probably Marge could tell me if I'm wrong, if a road had more than 2 houses using that road, it was declared a public road and went on the census map. And that census is taken every 10 years. I don't know what date the last one was taken.
April.
Yeah. So I don't know where that would fit into the criteria here, what's determined as a public road or not a public road, based on that criteria. The other thing that came up that was mentioned was 5, which is Compton's Road. So from what I gathered is that by the town taking ownership because they've been providing some maintenance, the town would be paying for that road's maintenance and repaving, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All righty. But who, and you said that the county could not find who paid for that road?
No, it was late, but I asked Mark to check with the county because we've been throwing it back and forth that we can't find anything on Ryan's Road. The county did that. I think Marge is aware that the county came in. They came in, it was a quick process, but I find it hard to believe that they would have done it without proper channels and stuff.
Right. But what I'm saying is that we know that the town did not pay for it, and we know the water district didn't pay for it. So somebody else paid for it.
I can tell you where the funds came from. The funds came years ago. I think it's been 1 or 2 years they've stopped it, but each county commissioner had $150,000 that they could spend in their district. And I believe that's where the funds came from to do Bryan's Road. But keep one other thing in mind, that the people on Bryan's Road, they needed some repair work done, because that road has been in for over 9 years, probably 10 to 11 years. It's held up pretty good, and it's abused by cut-through traffic. But the road got so bad that they had to do some patchwork, and it was between $5,000 and $10,000 that the residents actually came up with the money to repair that road. You know, as far as I'm concerned, they shouldn't have had to do that, especially once we started getting the gas tax money. So that's where we stand on Bryan's Road.
Okay, well, I mean, I was looking at it from the aspect of the fact that if the town didn't pay for the roads and the water district didn't pay for the paving of the road originally, why should we be encumbered with paying $5,000 to $10,000 to repave their road? In other words, it's their road. You guys didn't pay for it. The water district didn't pay for it. So why should the rest of us pay for it? I mean, that's, you know.
Ken, I appreciate your question, but 3 minutes is up.
Okay.
But hey, I think the way I feel, and I only speak as the vice mayor and councilman, okay? We get gas tax funds for each mile of road. Okay, Bryan's Road, Compton Road, Marcellus D Road. We get so much money every year for each one of those roads.
Right.
So that's basically what we would do the repairs and stuff with. In other words, I think since we became a town, that the residents are looking for better roads, better drainage, a lot more better things. We've got revenue coming in. It's, like I've said before, and Mark can correct me, I think most of our tax dollars that we get in the town will come from, if it's not already coming from commercial businesses, it will come from commercial businesses. So that's, but no, it's not, we've got revenue coming in from Bill, from AT&T, Florida Power and Light. That's why we've got a little over $3 million in the contingency fund, or, I call it in the bank. So that money, we can spend that money on whatever we feel like is going to benefit the residents of Los Hatchie.
Okay, thank you.
Who's next?
That's what, oh, I'm sorry. Bill Allen.
Bill out of E-Road. I don't know how much of this started with what we passed to you out of the Roadway Pedestrian Trails Greenway Advisory Committee. VTAG or RETCA, however you want to look at the acronym. But what we did there was we got worried that we were collecting gas tanks on road mileage and then spending that on roads that weren't really owned or deeded or said that it's private property. That's where we were worried there, that somehow we were spending the gas tax money on private property, and we wanted y'all somehow to get the correct legal right to be maintaining those roads. And perhaps there's a way around it, that if they just sign off something that the homeowner goes out there with whoever's going to do it, and just says, GPS here, GPS there, you guys can use this part of my property legally, or something. Without because GPS will take you down to, it changes from here to here. Okay, it's really, really good. They just go to the corner of where that road is encroaching on their grass or whatever, and say, okay, you can use it south of there, north of there, east of there, west of there, whatever. But somehow, when some pencil pusher somewhere starts going through all the books and these big audits, we ran through this at FAU where they come in every so often and really do an audit. And wait a minute, we're spending money on this guy's private property. So somehow get it legal.
All right, Todd McLean. John will be next.
Todd McLean, D Road. This gas tax, the way you collect it, is supposed to be on roads that you maintain, not roads that you have contracts to maintain. The Water Control District keeps a log as what roads they grade, they water down, they keep that log every month. Probably 98% of the roads that you're collecting gas tax money have never even seen a grader. They're private driveways that the grader can't even fit down. In addition, the lane mileage is double, assuming that it's all 2 lanes. I can assure you that the majority of the roads that are actually driveways that you're collecting gas tax money on are only single lane, not 2 lane. So right there, you're probably almost collecting double what you should be. To have this attitude, let's just worry about it when somebody comes and asks us, is a bad idea, because once you've spent that money, if somebody does come back, we're going to want their money back. It's going to be a huge amount of money that people, the residents, are going to have to fork over. To take that path, I think, is a bad idea.
John?
John Ryan, 3508 A Road. Let me correct a few misconceptions. Most recent one, I was concerned about 1 lane or 2 lanes. The League of Cities and the county recognize that it's much more expensive to maintain dirt roads than it is to maintain surface roads. They count 1 lane dirt roads as 2 lanes for that reason. The other thing that's most important is that the state of Florida for many years has recognized that rural local roads often have questionable mixes of titles and survey rights. They established 95-361 to allow towns like ours to have rights to continue to maintain public use roads. They define those rights as the road surface from one edge to the road surface of the other edge that's been maintained. 7 years of maintenance by a town counts as qualifying under the statute. June of this coming year, or this year, the town will have been subsidizing road maintenance through the district for 7 years. I think to the extent that the town would probably not want to just rely on a legal opinion, it would be fairly easy, and I think would be fully supported by the League of Cities, for the town to file a local bill to qualify its historic publicly used roads under 95-361. And I believe the town could do just what the district did, which is not take the simple title to the road surface, but simply to take a public easement that would be a perpetual easement for the continued maintenance of the roads. That doesn't change anybody's ownership, and over and above that, you've got a background of prescriptive easement rights and the fact that use of those roads for mail, garbage, and fire rescue has been historically maintained. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Frank, and after Frank, Marsh.
Frank Shallow, Marcel Boulevard. When Bryan Road was done, that was a group of residents from that road that went over there to the county commissioner, then Commissioner Maslowski. They asked him to go ahead and pave the road, and he agreed to do it. They did it, but they did it pretty much because they've never done an Ocean before. They did it as a, back then it was a one inch layer compressed down to about ½ an inch. That's why that road tore up like it did in so many different places. When after Bryan was done, the people on Marcella went ahead and said, well, if the county commissioner paid for that road, then they could pay for our road. We wanted to get it done. We had a vast majority of the residents that were in favor of that. So we approached Commissioner Maslowski, myself, and Don Whiting, and he agreed to pay for it in full. But we had to go in and have we had to sign a paper, which I think you've all seen, and that paper pretty much was a very simple legal document that the county came up with that just basically says it gives permission for the county to come on the road and Ojum the road with speed humps. And we arranged for them to put islands in as ways to reduce the traffic and ways for people to pass safely on each side. And also we had to agree to keep it open in perpetuity for any kind of public use. The county was worried that if we got the road done, it'd be a nice road, then the gates would come up and it'd be like a homeowners association, and that money would have been wasted. So this is pretty much what we did. And it was very simple. It was getting a legal description of your property, which was easily obtained through the property appraiser. And we had to sign it, and it was notarized. And it was very simple, and then we came in, and the town came in and got it done. So what the town has to look at is if they're going to do something like this and follow that example that's already been tried and tested, in which nobody lost any part of their land to anybody. They kept their piece of land. In my case, I didn't know this, I actually owned out to about 80% of the road. My neighbor owned about that much of the road, and she had a ditch. So that's how we were able to work around one person that didn't want to sign. Something you have to realize as you're going through this process tonight and in the future is that if you decide to go this way, that if you want a percentage, you have to figure out a percentage. Is it going to be 100% of the people on the road signs? Is it going to be 50 plus 1? Is it going to be 60? Whatever you guys decide, because you need to have a policy to do this. And the other thing was with Bryan is that if they were to be told about this and you all approve this, and give them the papers. I know I'm talking with many people on Bryan that they're waiting to get something done, and they want to get it done as soon as possible. And if it's as simple as doing this, and it's legal, and some of the council decides they want to do, then we can go forward. And other roads, I'm sure that if they see that they do not lose their land, they will go ahead and go forward with this too.
Thank you, Frank. Mark?
Mark Herzog, A Road. As far as Bryant is concerned, those people have been paying the full assessment to the Water Control District for all of these years since their OGM went down. So where is all of that money that the district is not having to expend on courtesy grading going that these people are being charged for? So I think these people have paid more than their fair share to be entitled to have that resurfaced.
Thank you, Mark.
In addition to the gas money. Also, in regard to the census map that was done before the April 2010 census, Ken and I worked on that for several weeks, and we had to identify, like he said, every single road that had 2 residents on it. Well, now, you know, there are many towns throughout Palm Beach County where just a simple little alleyway without even a name is considered for gas tax money. So these little roads with 2 families on it are more or less an alleyway, and we should be out there measuring them and getting our gas tax for every single road that is used. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Any other public comments? Any comments from the council?
I know there's this hesitation to expend money on surveys and getting the proper legal descriptions. I think in the long term, you know, we're going to have to do it eventually. We need to bite the bullet and just accept the fact that, you know, any roads that we are going to claim as a town road, no matter which method we use, we are going to have to get legal descriptions. We are going to have to do surveys, just because we need to. That's plain and simple. And also, as far as a process as to how to adopt or claim town roads, I'm open to any and all processes. I'm not here really to speak. I'm here more to listen to what everyone's opinion is and go from there. Jim?
Well, part of what I would agree with what Brian is commenting on. I mean, it sounds like, again, we're talking about something that we now dedicate the time to this rather than touch on this in the meeting. So the idea for trying to get money. The least expensive way to do things, not necessarily the best, but we certainly need to look at what tools we have available to us to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, and then weigh them and determine what it gives us and make that determination. But I would think that worst case scenario is that we have to hire somebody to survey for every single road and put markers out. I don't think that's the way we want to go, and it sounds like we have other options. But as far as my concern is the process, I don't want to interrupt the ability we have to provide services to the 10 roads. And we can in parallel maybe move down a path that accomplishes some more permanent or better designation. That's fine. But I think we should stick with our gas tax approach in terms of here's the roads that are town roads, and those are the roads that we also maintain, or can maintain either through the Water Control District, swimming responsibility, or the town. So hopefully we can still move that direction, but gather up some of the other ideas and let it work in parallel. not working. One stops us from doing the other.
I think some of the criteria we can use to help us recognize public town roads would be one, the census map. Two, whether or not the postal service delivers mail. Three would be whether garbage goes there, whether the garbage trucks go there. I think that those would be some of the good criteria to help recognize town roads.
So I would, just on that, there are definitions of public roads, private driveways, we can look at for those things. And, you take a look at the, I don't know if I have any of the
Page 9 or 20?
I brought my own stuff.
Page 9 or 20.
Here's the definition, for example, with the federal rules, where ultimately this information goes from the town to the county to the state to the feds. It talks about a public road means any road under the jurisdiction of and maintained by public authority and open to public common. Okay. And so all the roads in town that are public roads are under your jurisdiction, whether they're district roads or non-district roads. That was confirmed in the 2011 special act. And all the public roads you have jurisdiction over. Okay. And then you maintain them as public roads. Well, what does open to the public mean? It means that the road is available except for scheduled periods of time, like, you know, if there's a parade or something. Extreme weather, emergency conditions. It's passable by standard four-wheeled passenger cars, open to the general public for use, and then they say without. And you can't have, we think without restricted gates, prohibited signs, or any regulations other than size or weight. So you have a definition you can use for public roads already. The post office, fire trucks, the garbage trucks, all indications that you have definite matches that flows down to the state as well, that you can use for public service. I think that gets to one of the issues that we need to talk about is you have some roads that you have in your gas tax, and I hate to bring this up, but they have signs on the gates, and that's something you're going to have to discuss. Because those are concerns.
Right. And Mike, you're right now. We just received these pictures tonight, okay? One, for example, is Sally's Alley. Everybody knows where Sally's Alley is on B Road, okay? They've got a recent picture, and I believe it was taken April 12th, 2013, okay? I know for a fact that when we were campaigning for the election, they did not have a gate up, okay? They've got a gate up now, and that's the first time, because of the picture here, I see they have a gate up. So, as a town, we're responsible to tell them, if you privatize it, then we're going to take you off the gas tax map. Now, that's 0.24 miles. Okay, I don't know if they put the gate up because we weren't doing anything for their road and they just wanted to make it private, but that's something that we as a town, we need to find out. And as soon as possible, when we find these faults, then we'll take care of it. Now, I don't know how, like I said, that gate's just recent. But the other problem was Robert's Way. Everybody knows where Robert's Way is. And we bought one of the processes. We came up with a policy to, if we wanted to Ojum future roads, and we had to have a certain list of things to qualify that road. The first priority was that the majority of the people on that road wanted it Ojum. The second priority was that it had to have postal services, trash pickup, had to be open for fire rescue and police. Okay, and then we might have threw in a couple other things. One other thing we were looking for is the maintenance costs to maintain it as a dirt road. The research that was done on the roads in Loxahatchee Groves before we put the Ojum down, the research said that we spend 2 to 3 times more taxpayer dollars maintaining a dirt road than we do when we put the Ojum down. So that's one reason why we went to it, besides the fact that people wanted their roads paved. So we do have a policy that we all agreed upon, and Mike, we don't have a copy here tonight.
I don't.
I have
But that policy would be nice to look at. But these problems here, if we just found these problems, then we've got a public utilities guy, and I don't know, I would think the council would give direction, and not tonight because this is discussion, but or direct management that the one sign on Roberts Way says dead end, residents, and guest only. Now, according to the federal requirement, you can't have signs like that on a public road. But Roberts Way is a fairly long road, and we have done some work on Roberts Way that the residents are very pleased with. Hauling fill in, grading it. I don't know if we did any hedging or anything on Roberts Way or not, but the people were very glad to get their road graded and material put on it. Now, if these people want to keep this sign up, first of all, we got to educate them. If they want to keep the sign up, then basically we would have to take that road off the map. Now, I just find it hard to believe that the residents on that road, there's quite a few people would be willing to do that, especially when a lot of people in Loxahatchee right now in the past 6 months, since we paved the 4 roads, everybody's complimenting on how many times their road is getting graded, how many times their road is getting watered, because the district has more time on doing other roads. So I'm hearing a lot of positive things out there for the road movements. So therefore, that's where we stand on any of these things that we have pictures of. We need to verify it. We need to find out what route they want to take Martin with.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Your Honor. I just wanted to indicate that we actually are going to talk about these more when we hit the gas tax issue, so we can continue on the agenda. The next item is we kind of talked about it a little bit, the town road system, how to develop it, a process, a timeline, and a policy for the road prioritization. Now, Dr. Lau was just up here recently. Some of the paperwork that we placed in the agenda with this. For the record, I'll read that motion from the record committee. Dr. Lau made a motion to approve the committee's recommendation to the town council that within a reasonable time frame, example 6 months from February 5th, 2013, the town should not supply any money for the maintenance and or improvement of any non-district road until the right-of-way easement for that road is legally transferred to the town. Committee member Strelo seconded the motion, which passed unanimously. And then also what we included with this agenda item was a letter that the town attorney drafted for my signature, which was an earlier attempt related more towards the Collecting Canal project, but we've already talked to some extent about the other letter related to Bryant Road, and that might, in a generation of paperwork here, the Bryant Road letter might actually be more beneficial to our needs. But just to get back to the outline from the agenda, I think we do need to develop the process, how we're going to go forward in terms of how we address the entire situation. Our timeline, which certainly will address monetary considerations, and then how we would prioritize what roads in the network we would move forward on. And Vice Mayor, you already touched on it a little bit with the policy that you referred to back from 2012 that you looked at in July, and you were, basically at that time, I think we were talking about 50% of the people on the roadway, which I don't know if that's still hold at this point in time. But that was one of the provisions. The other provision was the issue of mail service and solid waste service on the roadway. As I recollect, another item that you had raised and the council approved was that the roadway or the road had to be receiving gas tax. Those were the 3 principal criteria. And there were some other things that were talked about, but at that point, being that we were in the budget season, we didn't move forward beyond that. So at this point, I'd like to have us give staff some direction as to how we do develop this road system with those 3 important criteria to be discussed tonight.
Mark, before we move on, Howard, did you want to speak about what we were talking about earlier?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And then we'll move on to the next item.
attorney. As far as what I've always been led to believe is people can't wake up one morning and get together and decide they're going to make their road a private road. We've talked about how to eliminate cut-through traffic for many, many years, and one of the options discussed was making the roads private. So as far as approaching those people that have put up signs and tried to make it look like their road is private, I don't quite understand what the legality of that is, if they're even allowed to do it legally, and if they're not, then I don't think the town needs to ask them if they want to be part of the gas tax funds or not. They should just be told that they need to remove their signs. And I'd like some kind of, one of you guys maybe to ask the attorney, is this even necessary to discuss, or do we just, as a town, tell them, I'm sorry, you're going to have to remove your sign? Thank you.
Mike, can you answer?
Well, it depends, each road is, we'll have to take a look at, but the concept is that because of the way that the road rights have developed, the town doesn't have title to those roads just yet, because we're maintaining them with the anticipation that we'll need that dedication period. So I don't know that we can compel them. I can't say that uniformly across the board, but my initial thought would be that you would need to have these folks work with us before we took some action to compel removal. I'm not sure where that would go to get them to compel those, but fundamentally, we've got to work on a way to, because all these are public access ways. People can get tickets on these roads too. I make the sheriff happy, but he knows that. There's case law on that. You look at all these public roads. So, but the issue is how do we get the documentation to make sure that that the questions are put to rest. And to do what Howard suggested, we may require litigation. And it's for what we're doing here at this point. I'm not sure you all have to give direction for me to research whether that's something you want me to do. But in the meantime, we have to make sure that we're accurate with the gas tax maps.
Great.
I'm not sure where to talk about this, Mike, if we wait and go to the gas tax certification, or if we want to talk about it here, because it kind of all overlaps. I understand we're trying to put together some sections to talk about, but of course they all overlap at some point. So in terms of the definition as we have evolved to understand, and one of the points that you just made, I don't know if it resonated with everybody in this room, and I picked up on and I'm aware of it, but if you have a statute that says you maintain roads for a certain period of time, the assumption is that you will maintain those roads for that period of time. And at the end of that period of time, the rest of the legality comes to a conclusion. But during that period of time, it's assumed that you are maintaining those roads to get to a point where eventually you satisfy that requirement. So I can't see us not maintaining roads because we can't do it because we can't. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but we know that there's a structured process, if you will, set in place that says you do this for a period of time, then you've achieved this particular point. So we have been working along that same assumption, I think, for a number of years. And I would continue working on that assumption. Now, specific to anybody that decides to put up a gate on their road, or some people call it a driveway, what we call a roadway, if it's been subject to gas tax collection and designation as a town road, then I guess I would at least inform the residents, every resident on that road, that if they choose to make this a private road by meeting some standard, and I think a gated standard as far as not open to the public, and therefore the services are not allowed on that road, then they would lose the support of the town to maintain their road. Otherwise, if they have not met this criteria, then the gate doesn't mean that they have created a private road out their driveway roadway. But at least we could contact them if there's some specific cases where there's a gated closure that precludes the services criteria that we talked about. So I don't know, certainly not talking about litigation, but we could send them a letter and say, you know, by doing this, this is what you give up. If again, it's something that we recognize would fall under the privatization of the roadway. Just because somebody puts a sign up and says, this is a private road, doesn't necessarily make it a private road. So I would say that if you need to give you direction on the council, if you want to.
The gates for clear indication that, of course, they're attempting to privatize that section. The signs, you know, are an issue as well, but I mean, they may be, I think all these situations, maybe people don't understand, or some of them will need to understand what comes along with that decision. If that's the decision that folks want to make on the other side of that sign, on the other side of that gate, then the town has to make a decision whether to impose the town's will or to allow that to occur, and then they don't get the maintenance, they don't get the town's assistance, and we'll correct or update the map to reflect that road is not on our map. I think we need to do something in those situations that we become aware of.
Well, the council might want to direct you to anybody that's gated their road closed to traffic, that we contact them with the awareness that this is what they may be trying to achieve something else, but this is what they give up.
Yeah, I would suggest the first step not come from the attorneys.
Come from town management.
Yeah, more informal.
And I'd like to see a consensus from the council tonight. We've got a public work guy, and he communicates very well with the people in Loxahatchee. The simple thing with Roberts Way, and we haven't looked at the rest of them yet, but Roberts Way has 2 signs up. And you say we shouldn't have those signs. Sally's Alley has a gate up, and there's only one residence that lives on that side. It used to be 2, there's 1 right now that I know of. In other words, I would hope we can direct management to use our public work guide to talk to them about the gates, educate them that if we're to maintain their roads. Go ahead, Mark.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I just wanted to indicate as a point of order, we slipped back into the gas tax, and we were talking about number 2, so.
I think we can
hold the gas tax off and finish number 2, then, you know.
No, we're talking about this particular item because it kind of leads over. This is a couple of cases that we happen to be using that you provided to us that are under
Well, we already talked about that.
information, but we're now talking about having those residents contacted and who can do the contacting. And I think that's appropriate for us to handle that now. I'm not talking about gas tax or certification. We're talking about something that is gated roadways. Any roads that are closed to gates for public access, people want to be informed what they're doing, if they understand what they're doing. Is that what I think council?
That's where, and this was brought in because of the legal federal definition of public roads. So let's solve one problem, then we'll move on to another. And the one problem is the definition says that they can't put up a gate. The definition for gas tax money says that they can't have signs and stuff up. So let's take care of this and get it out of the way and then move on. So, I personally think direction would be to management to use our public workmen to confront these problems. Because first of all, if you've got 6 or 8 people on Roberts Way that live there, I don't think all 8 of them pitched in to put the signs up. I'm sure that one person probably put the signs up. And you're going to have to educate the people. We could take the signs down, and then that person would probably call and complain, which might save us some time and money as far as the public utility man goes. That would be, if we take the signs down, then basically they're going to call the town and say, why did you take my signs down? Somebody stole my signs, and then you can explain to the person and find out if it's just one resident on the road or if it's a whole association that wants to maintain their own road. But the direction would be, I don't think that's too big of a problem for our public work guy.
I agree. So send them out there. Let me just give you up to the road directors to visit if you can, and just make them aware of this concern that they may lose maintenance if they're trying to accomplish something else with gating. And gating is where I would focus on, because anybody put up a sign, but they haven't restricted access by putting up some kind of sign.
Your Honor, if I can, let me offer this then, because I'd like to stay on process. If you want, what we can do is we can do it almost like a three-step or a three-strike process. If somebody puts a gate up, I can have our Public Works Director go out and talk to them. If that doesn't resolve the issue, then they could get what I would call the informal letter from the town manager indicating, we talked to you, we wanted you to take the gate down. And then finally, if that doesn't bring success, then we could have what I would call a formal letter from the town attorney. At that point, if they still ignore it, well, then they're certainly a candidate for a definite private road and not a public road, and all that goes with that.
Sound like a winner to me, Mark.
Is that for signs as well?
Not the term. Yes.
Well, we can start with gates, but keep in mind now, if the signs present a problem to our management as far as us collecting gas tax money on that road, let's kill two birds with one stone. You got Roberts Way and Sally's Alley, kind of like in the same neighborhood. So my main concern is satisfying our management where they're not having any problems. Do we need a motion on that, Mike, or consensus?
I do a motion, and that policy is recommended by your town manager.
I'll make that.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, say aye.
Roll call.
Aye.
Roll call.
Oh, roll
New
call.
policy.
New policy, roll call, please.
Okay, Liang,
Yes.
Rackett,
Yes.
Canzero.
Yes. All right, let's take care of number 3. Moving on to number 3, gas taxes. Is that where we want to hit next, Mark?
Well, we didn't really talk about two unless at this point in time we're having the first discussion, but we still don't have a direction on the process timeline and priority, if you will, to roads.
No, I agree with you. Number 2 is very important. Process, timeline, and policy for road that work prior to release. And that policy that we came up with, now to me, that would be good enough for people that wanted their roads open. Okay. Now we've got an engineer that's coming on board here shortly. Now, I know with the water control district, when they open the roads, okay, they had the roads surveyed, and John could probably help me out here, but they basically, when we do something and it's surveyed and we have a map,
Maintenance map.
a maintenance map once that. So I know that when we do, we're hoping sometime in the near future collecting canal. That's a big project. So we'll have to have a maintenance map on that. It'll have to be surveyed, and we'll get the job done. So the timeline. These people on Bryan's Road and Compton Road and Marcella, we've been talking about these roads for over a year now. Come June, we got hurricane season coming up again, but when I say process with these 3 roads, I feel like, as the vice mayor, where do we have a problem where we can't get a bid or resurfacing these roads? We don't even have, we talk about it, we come up with a plan. It doesn't cost anything to get a bid. If we have to go out for RFPs, I don't believe that costs us anything. It doesn't cost the taxpayers. So, and a bid should be good for, we've got 1 or 2 contractors in here. A bid should be good for a certain limit of time. So, these people I've got residents calling me off Bryan's Road. In Compton, Marcella, they seem to be fairly happy, but I know their road needs to be repaired. All right, but I've got people calling me, asking me, why don't they want to fix my road? And like I said before, the gas tax money has been coming in for 7 years now. All right, and if we have a problem with the gas tax money, then we don't do it with the gas tax money. We do it with the contingency fund. And when we get everybody happy, then we do capital improvement projects with the gas tax money. A capital improvement project like collecting Canal Road is going to put a dent in our gas tax money. So that's where I stand on that. Is these 3 roads? I'd like to see the process start by getting a RFP to resurface these 3 roads. One thing I learned about Bryan's Road, besides it being a cut-through road, and Bryan's Road is worse than Compton, but people will cut across Compton and Bryan's Road so that they don't have to even take a chance on coming out on Okeechobee Boulevard. They can shoot over to Folsom and then head to Southern, and they got a thorough highway all the way in town. And that's what they're doing. The delivery trucks are using Bryan's Road to come over to F Road and make their deliveries. They don't want to get on Okeechobee Boulevard at Folsom or F Road. It's not bad getting off going north or south, but as far as trying to get on at certain times of the day, it's dangerous. So as far as I'm concerned, the process for that would be a direction that we go out for RFPs to have these 3 roads serviced. And another thing with Bryan, I leave Bryan alone. When they paved Bryan's Road, it was a quick, Mark would vouch for that if she was here, it was a quick process because people in Loxahatchee did not like the word pavement. Okay, midnight special, whatever you want to call it. But they didn't come into the driveways like we did on the Ojum roads. So when people come out to Bryan's Road and they make their turns, whether it's horse trailers, big trucks, or delivery trucks, that's another reason they're tearing the roads up, because it was not properly done. But like I said, even though it wasn't done properly, it's lasted over 10 years. And I call that road a cheap shot. So if we're going to do something for the people in Loxahatchee as a town, I don't want no patchwork, patch a hole here, patch a hole there. When we get done with the road, I want it to look like a new road. And then I want to see how long it lasts us because of the quality of work we put into it.
Vice Mayor, if I could, I just wanted to say, I think, yeah, what you just identified there definitely works from a standpoint of prioritization. The roads you identified, and whether you want to, do one bid or one RFP that takes all 3 into consideration. But B and C, the timeline and the policy, I'm not moving into the gas tax now, but I'm saying one of the things one of the projects the management company is working on is an amendment to the capital improvement settlement, the comprehensive plan. You have the work scope in your paperwork. And those are the kind of things that we need to know as we move forward. It's going to be the timeline as to how fast you want these things and which roads are identified so that we can put those into that amendment. And then what I'm saying process, the rest of it is how you want to look at the rest of the town roads. I mean, we have the entire town to look at. So, there are certain needs that we have to identify. I mean, some of this we can take care of in that amendment, and we can try to come back to you with some recommendations. But that's how I'm trying to have the process move forward in terms of thinking about it. It's helpful to you.
Mark, I have a question for you. Were you working on the capital element of our conference? Right. We're talking about capital improvements then, right? And you tell me that the capital element has to list every road that we're talking about and the timeline to do it.
It doesn't have to.
Well, I'm just asking. It sounds like that's what you said. That's why I asked you.
Right now, our current CIE, as you know, doesn't list any improvements whatsoever. In order to address some of the concerns that the management company had indicated to you earlier about the gas tax monies, that's the main reason why we're moving forward with that amendment. But this whole issue right now, too, goes beyond gas tax and everything. It's just trying to set up our whole structure.
But in the amendment I thought you were working on was to just address the capital improvements that we did not address in our comp plan. And addressing that gives us the option then to make capital improvements. The roads that we actually choose to put under that are something we can do independent of comp plan change. We don't have to list them is what I'm driving to. So we've asked you to move ahead on that change.
You don't have to have a large list. What I'm saying is you do need to have at least a 5-year plan is what we're going to be giving you so that you can move projects on the capital improvements program that we've already identified. We went ahead and did the program ahead of the comprehensive plan amendment. We have Putney Canal on there, for example, as Mayor indicated. But my thinking is, we can't be going out, as the Vice Mayor said, we can't be going out on individual projects for every roadway. It probably makes sense at some point to take several of these roads and do them in one shot.
Yeah, but I guess the 2 points. One, we don't have to list each road in our comp plan. that we're gonna do a capital improvement.
Assessment, that we were talking past each other. The comp plan will provide for a 5-year schedule of improvements, and then it has to be updated on an annual basis. So perhaps in the comp plan amendment, you would list your initial 5-year plan, and then, but it would be updated, but you don't update it through comp plan amendments every year. It provides in the comp plan that it's updated
You
annually.
send your capital budget to the state every year.
Yeah, so the initial language in the comp plan probably should include your initial 5-year plan and provide for those annual updates. And then as you accomplish what's going on in those 5 years, eventually what's in your comp plan has been done, and you're moving through it as you adopt it every year. But you need to provide a mechanism for that in the comprehensive plan, which I think has been proposed. And there is a specific reference to the gas tax. One of the revenues of the gas tax, there's different pots for it. But one of the pots says, hey, if you have it in your capital element, then it's something that you can spend your money on. It's more restrictive than the other type, and I think the goal is to put in the comp plan, and that alleviates some of the concerns that have been expressed. And I think you gave the direction to do that, and it was going to be done as part of the other comp plan review relating to development.
That's what I understood. So what we were talking about was, under the comp plan, capital improvements section, if you will, we are then be moving forward and identifying as we go forward. But right now, we have identified Collecting Canal, what remains on without Ojum. And we've identified that there's Compton improvements, which would be capital improvements, I presume, and Brian, we've identified and had discussions and agreed to do this. So at this point, I don't know that we have anything else that we could say that we've discussed and agreed to do other than those 3 segments. But there's another one, I think we also talked about having F road resurfaced, which would probably be, since it extends the life, be something that we not want to include. That was a transfer, once it's transferred, since it's, so I would say that of that list of 4 that I can think of, I don't know of anything else. And if we have to put those as a starting point in the complement and amendment, that's fine, let's do that. But meanwhile, it sounds like we also might need a bid to cover those 4. If there's anything else, gentlemen, that I can think of that might then give us a group to go after an RFP, then let's go ahead. First of all, let's go start on an RFP, and second, if we want to include all 4 segments or pieces as for a road proposal, because you don't have to wait for the transfer. You can move forward and get the information back from us vendors and get us a good 4. I think that's what you're asking for, Vice Mayor. So I would be in favor of that.
And another thing, I think, the Water Control District was asked to hold off till July for them to finish our medical plaza at Southern and F Road. So hopefully in July, the way I interpret it is they're going to pay Ojum or whatever from Southern to Collecting Canal sometime in July. Now hurricane season will be here, but pavers work in the rain. So I would like to see if that is going to be done in July, then I would like to see something going with Collecting Canal so that everything could come together. And I'd like to see something done with the other 3 roads. As far as resurfacing F Road, it would be the ideal time because the contractor would be here. But now we could go ahead and go out for RFPs and get estimates. And we've got May, June, and July. We've got 2 months to start that process now with a motion tonight. And at least we've accomplished something for 2013. And the district already has the money to do the section from Southern to Collecting Canal. So that's not hindrance to us. And the district's done an outstanding job in the last year with the 4 roads they paved and the sections, and they'll finish up F Road. So I'd like to see the town throw something in there and give people something to talk about for 2013. So I would
seeing Compton, Bryan, Marcella as bids. We don't have Marcella requested, but the other two. And the collecting canal savings, most of it.
Right, to finish up collecting canal, in other words, we've got an engineer coming on board, we needed survey and all that stuff.
And the resurfacing of that will be all at the same time as far as what we talked about for a motion. I'm just trying to package a motion. And we can identify.
Maybe this is a workshop, where we want to run?
No, special meeting.
No, that's special.
And the only reason I would make a motion along the lines of what we already discussed as a council, already approved as a council, I wouldn't come up with anything or suggest anything that we haven't talked about. You know, so those are the things as I recall, and if that's a question for the rest of you guys. If that's what we've already, I think we have, and you'd have to check maybe minutes, but I think we agreed to resurface that. I'm aware of the district's waiting for that work to be done down there to finish the lower part of that. We talked about Compton, we talked about Bryan, we haven't talked about Marcella, so whether we include it as a proposal, we could maybe include it in the proposal so we have one fell swoop, and then we then decide whether as a council we're going to do that. And then the last component would be, what is?
You've got to resurface that road. And that's another thing, we're gonna have a brand new road from Lincoln Canal to Southern Bullhorn. And to me, that would be the ideal time to make F Road look like South End.
Vice Mayor, here's a suggestion. Council can bat this around if they'd like, but maybe the way to go is, we may have folks in the town that, like Bryant Road or Compton Road, or, they're desirous of the town going ahead and doing the improvement question. So maybe what we do is, from a process standpoint, we start off with a request. We go ahead and we execute. We have them basically do all the legwork in terms of coming to town and getting everybody on board on their street, if you will, or their road, if you will. And then we would go ahead and we would execute. If there's a survey required, we would get the survey. We would move forward, do all the proper filings, et cetera, et cetera. That might be, when we're talking process, that's kind of like what we're talking about. That way you could leave it to the residents and actually if there's a road that's ready to go, and they want the town to undertake it's basically industrious on their own part.
Mark, I kind of disagree with that for the simple fact that it's a good idea, but the residents on these roads have been asking for over a year. I would like, if we need something from the residents while we go out for RFPs, because that's going to be time consuming, okay, then we work, kill two birds with one stone. We get with the residents on these three roads, and my priority would be, if there was residents, if 51% of the residents says, I don't want you to touch my road, then I would have a problem. But we need to give the residents something. First of all, we need to let them know we need to have an idea of how much it's going to cost for the benefit of the council, the town people, and the people that live on those roads. So I don't want to hold the process of going out for RFPs, waiting on the residents to give us surveys and stuff like that.
I don't have an issue with you going and getting the RFP, but there's some of the components of it I want to just make sure that I would consider part and parcel of that is for the roads that we're going to be doing this work on. We have, again, we've talked about this, we have the dedications for Compton and Marcella. And I believe, I haven't updated on it, but did the district add those two roads, the direction to the district council to work with the town on, or not?
On the two that they had, they were recipients of the right, not responsibility to maintain.
They accepted the dedication to the public, on behalf of the public.
And they were going to transfer that to the town.
Okay, so then those would come to the town, and those would be town roads.
Right. The Bryan Road.
Bryan Road, we have to do the paperwork on. We've talked about that a couple of times. That'll be part and parcel of what you have us do while we're doing the RFP. That would be a town road.
Right. They've also talked about transferring Collecting Canal, Water Control District. And I believe, although I believe they talked about F, but I don't remember.
That was going to be my last question, is if the town is going to move forward and do this work, through F Road as well. I know that hasn't been done yet, but that would have to be part of that discussion too, because then all this work is done on roads that are dedicated, or accepted by the town on behalf of the public, or town roads, and that would be part of what, if you did a motion to do a bid on these roads, we would understand that as our direction to do what we need to do with those 4 roads, to bring it back to you if we needed further action or clarification.
Yeah, I guess it would be fine.
But I would say the back office stuff, the paperwork.
We would get, a motion to get a bid to resurface, to provide a capital improvement to those roads. In 3 cases, we're allowing, if you will, a resurface of an existing improved road. And again, we're throwing in Marcel because it's one of those that has one, but we haven't been discussing doing it. Trying to combine it, I think, with some of the wisdom you've given us before. Don't do this piecemeal. Don't make it look like you're trying to stay underneath the ceiling. Do it all at once. And understanding that we're not going to do anything until the wheels that are in motion conclude by transferring that title, if you will, whatever title they can transfer to us. But we can work in parallel in getting the quotes to do this work, I think, without having all those things having to happen first, knowing they're in process, not knowing that there's any limitation as to a restriction that the Water Control District, as far as I know, has not registered any concerns that they can't do these things. It's just a little slow sometimes getting things done, but John Ryan, I assure you, has got a whip out and he's cracking it. So we're making progress. So I would say it would include those.
I just want to make sure.
But it'd have to be, again, your direction would include those things have to continue because we think they're moving forward. So I'll make that motion that we go off an RFP. It would include resurfacing the 3 existing resurfaced roads, be Marcella, Compton, Bryan, and it would include the unsurfaced area of Collecting Canal, and it would include F road resurfacing, and that's it.
And again, just for the record, this doesn't mean you're doing the work.
No.
You haven't voted to do the work. This is just to do the bid and have us start doing the back office stuff.
Right.
Before a second, I'd like to hear public comments.
Phil Yang, and after Phil, Howard Moore.
We can second it for discussion, and then certainly don't have to vote on it until after.
Excuse me, is mine not in there? Candidate Mr. Rocket Trust.
Virginia, you're right after Howard Moore, unless you want to go ahead of
No, you
ladies
didn't
first.
say my name, that's.
No, one at a time.
Totally, I told you, 148 Terrace North. I find it interesting that the town have a lot of discussion about ownership, this, that, and the other, and want to pay it. The town has a very first road that you own legally and everything else, and have a hard time maintaining it. Why don't you pave that first? You own that road, you have a legal right to it. Got a lot more, every single resident's asking for it. But it seems like you're talking about all the other roads and having so many issues. Why don't you take the road that you do own, the very first road that you do own, and fix that road and say, hey, look, this is a town road. Oh, look what a great job you've done. You should do that. You don't have any legal issues. You don't have no nothing. It belongs to you. So I was thinking maybe you should entertain that first.
Phil, are you referring to, which road are you referring to?
148 Terrace North. It happens to be by my side, on my house, but it is a legal town road. It is the first road that is dedicated legally, easement, everything. That's your very first road. And we have 100% all the other residents. There are more than 5 residents on that road, more than 5 residents on that road, and you have 100% agreement to have the road paved. I would request that the town pave your very own road first. That's my suggestion, and I would appreciate that. Thank you. It's true.
Howard Moore. Virginia, you'll be next.
I wanted clarification on what exactly is meant by resurfacing, because way back when, before the very first road was Ojum, I did an awful lot of research on the subject, and I was told by quite a few experts that I talked to that you cannot put Ojum on top of Ojum. The only thing you can do is X number of years down the line, you can go ahead and reseal it so you give it a longer life. But as far as putting another coating of Ojum on top of Ojum, once it has begun to unravel, is something you just do not do. The only option is to tear it all up and put it down again. Now, is that what we're talking about when it comes to F Road? Because I don't ever remember F Road being that horrible. Or are we talking about when you guys are using the phrase resurface, are we actually talking about sealing the road? Because that is the option I was always told is on the table.
I think we had a quote for F Road, and it was given to us, given to the Water Control District, and it defined, Howard, what they were going to do. As I believe you're correct, it was a sealing or resealing. We would have to certainly define what improvements we would need to do on each of the other roads, especially if they're in such disrepair that they would need to be either dug up in sections, resealed in others. I don't know. That's why I was an accountant, not an engineer. But I would say that we could get that information as far as what we actually put out there.
Right, for a public promotional sense, if what we're talking about is resealing, then that's going to be swallowed by everybody else in Waxahachie a lot easier than if we're going to give everybody on F Road a brand new road when there's others still waiting for their road. Thank you.
Virginia?
Virginia Standish,
Frank after Virginia.
15410 a couple of points, please, when you're speaking to the public. If you could be consistent when you use the terms maintenance maps and surveys. Maintenance maps are not surveys. Throughout the years, we've had the terms thrown out at us that surveys are not done. I mean, surveys were done and they weren't. So let's just be consistent in our language to the public that they're maintenance maps we're talking about. Two, we were at the Waxahachie Groves Water Control District this week, Mr. Rocket, and they did also discuss Z Road, which thankfully you're not bringing up tonight because that brings me to my next point. On F Road or any project we do here, you've heard me say the town should not bear the cost of development infrastructure. So when we do F Road, as a member of the public, I would like to know what the cost was for the portion of the medical complex to have it paved, and I'd like that compared to the dollar amounts that they gave to the district to make sure that those funds are still adequate for what they were supposed to cover. And that applies to any other development project in this town. Also, I'd like to comment on your topic regarding roads and road tax. Let's acknowledge there could be some mistakes made in this town. Perhaps some people's private easements weren't taken as roads, and they are entitled to say, no, we don't want that. This still is the United States of America. Let's remember that also. And one other point I'd like to make just as a member of the public and even as a member of the FAAC, as far as the capital improvement project, and I don't know, I kind of have to go with Underwood Management, but I think the biggest project that I would just love to hear the dollar amount on is what would it cost to have a survey done of this town? Because we're doing an awful lot of work that is going to have to be covered by house bills and easements and taking a property, because in 100 years, it's just been graded over, no proper surveys have ever been done. So when you say it would cost too much, I would just like to know from an engineering firm what the cost would be to get a survey done of this town, because they have been done before. Thank you.
I think we, in one example, since we're surveying, we'd be involved in collecting canal, we will have an example in that particular case. So it may give us something, at least give us a sense. I think that was something that was going to be done for collecting canals, I understood it. Okay, so it'll give us one example of something that we could use. And as far as anything that's done on the South Ave, that's not our jurisdiction. It's not a town issue, that's the Water Control District fund, and the process for them to verify if they've got funds to do what needs to be done.
And keep in mind, South F Road has not been turned over to the town. It's not one of the roads, but F Road is. I believe F Road is one of them.
F Road north of Clinton Canal is what we talked about,
Right.
which is already
And
serviced.
the other thing, I don't know if it's possible, I'm not an engineer, maybe Virginia knows, but when we get an engineer on board, and I don't know if a survey company could give us an estimate on doing all the Loxahatchee, but if that's possible, I'd like to have an idea of what it would cost. I don't know if that's possible.
Well, once we get these professionals under contract, I think we're going to be able to make these
We definitely need to bring it to the public. In other words, if they say they can do the whole town for a certain price, I'd like to introduce it to the people and see what they think about it.
I made a motion, it has not been seconded.
I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm not the mayor, but I'm trying. Frank Shaw is next. And after Frank, Bill Lau.
Mine is on 2B. Are we on that yet? On the agenda, we are.
Timeline would be the Now, we changed 1 to 2, and B would be the timeline, process and timeline. So we're
This is on
discussing
more
all-
the legal issues of all that. I'll wait for him.
Okay.
Bill Lauder, 13 Avenue Road, I lost count. I think I turned it right into 3, but anyway, I'll go ahead, pretty short. When I talked about trying to get something legal in the hands of the town for anything spending public money on, one thing that we discussed in the RETAG meeting was that however it's done, make sure that you protect the residents. So if you say the residents got 10.1 acres, and something's deeded over for a road or signed over or whatever, make sure it's not legally taken down to 9.9, which would then keep that person from dividing into 2 fives, whatever.
Right.
That's the protection of the acreage.
Right, and Mike, we discussed that, and we've expressed our concern about that. I believe you told us that it would not affect.
You could provide in your, I know that you're having these with the ULDC committee, but you could provide that when calculating acreage for purposes of our code, that it include that property that has been dedicated or easement over to the town for these roads. That for those you would include that in the calculation so they wouldn't lose that. That's one thing that can be provided for. Because we look to that code to figure out how you count acreage. So it can be accomplished.
I think we did talk about that specifically. We want to make sure that's clear.
Marge, you want to speak on 2 again?
Mark Herzog, A Road. In June, we're going to have the surveying company that has been working in Loxahatchee Grove since the late 80s as our guest speaker. So it might behoove you to attend that meeting. Mr. Dennis Painter will be there. And he has some interesting history behind all of the surveys and why we have the problems that we do have. Also, you're talking about easements and so forth. The county has surplus land that they have offered to our town, and we have never addressed those. I mean, there's little strips on Raymond, there's little strips on 24th. We should be doing something with those. I mean, there's a whole section of one road where if somebody bought those up, nobody could pass beyond those surplus properties.
Marge, I may be wrong, but I believe we accepted those from the county.
Those were conservation easements?
No.
And whatnot. I'm sorry. What you're thinking of is the conservation easements. I think they may.
They are still listed as surplus property because
right.
The one on 134th, they're accepting bids and they're going to select the new owner of that land tomorrow.
And well, see, that's something that we need to direct management, because we had a situation over on 24th Circle, where somebody bought up the centerpiece of property, and that probably could have been purchased by the town for a reasonable price. But no, if we have properties like this, I would suggest, Marge.
County
that
didn't
you-
want to charge you anything for it. They
Right,
wanted
right.
to transfer it to you, and all you would have had to do is negotiate with the water control district for the non-ad valorem taxes that were owed on it. But that's just, you know, a way of addressing some of the easement issues that you're going to be facing in the future.
All right, because I thought that everything the county wanted to give us, that we accepted that. Now that's, and I'm talking about, they've got things that they've had for years and years, and we talked about it, and I thought the understanding from the council was that if they want to give it to us, we take it. I think, I may be wrong, but 22nd Road North had something to do with that as far as the easement and the drainage ditch. So we...
When I spoke to county, they said the only thing that the town accepted from them was 22nd. Period. That's it. Everything else that was listed on that list is still owned by county, and it's within our property. So I'll provide the management with the list again. It was during the end of Spence's term that this item came up for the council to address, and it may have just dropped by the wayside, but I did forward it maybe 2 months ago and said it needed to be addressed. Thank you.
Mr. Vice Mayor, the only thing we were considering was the only things that we were told at the time, this is 22nd Road. Only other properties that we had talked about were for a fee, or a tax bill or something along that line we talked about. But there was no other land offered to this town that we were aware of, council was aware of, that was the offer for just take it, because the one we did was spend a lot of time and effort on 22nd. We actually had to negotiate with having to give us some money so we could actually have some funding of the survey that was done, which was a partial. So that's the only thing that we had acted on, the only thing we were told. So if there's anything else, and town management has a new list, or has a list, whether new or otherwise, then they ought to be able to look at it and let us know what's on it, because I don't remember anything else. And we certainly would take things for nothing, although there was a price tag attached to 22nd North. We had to do a little bit of work, but not a lot of expense.
So that is, and so I'm assuming the direction of the council is Marge, get with Mark, and if there's any freebies out there, then we definitely need to do something about it before somebody else gets their hands on it. All right. Lung Chu, you didn't have an item, is this where you want to sit?
Thank you so much, Mayor. Councilman Lung Chu on Bureau. I hope you remember that the town has a capital improvement plan. I hope that all your discussion that you cover tonight is part of it. If not, you get to revisit it. Because you have set up a plan for capital improvement, and then suddenly you hear your citizens, your residents coming towards you and ask for this, ask for that, and then you take money out from that plan, you violate your original plan. That's what the budget is for. I hope that you hold the town management accountable for implementing your plan. If that's the plan, you put the money in, you budget money in, let them tell you what's the progress, how you achieve your original plan. I understand that you like to do it in your resident wards. You get to remember you have residents all over the town, not just those few roads. And one of the purposes to have the capital improvement plan is to make it known to the public how you're going to spend the money to improve your capital project. And then once that decision is made, stick to it. If you want to make some amendment to it, make sure you get enough input from your citizens, from your residents. Right now in this room, you might have a handful of residents from certain areas, but that doesn't mean the input will be sufficient for you to make amendments to your capital improvement plan. That's number one. Number two, I've seen a lot of residents coming to the council, requesting the council to take some action. I hope you remember that you are the governing board. You hire the town manager to do your work. They should be responding to the residents. They should be doing their work. I'm seeing it as you are
in children their responsibility. And I hope that when you get a chance to step back and think about this, don't let them get salary free. It's their responsibility. Number one. Number two, I haven't heard about how the town is going to evaluate the town manager yet. I know I heard from some of the councilmen talk about, is this part of your project? Is it part of your plan to accomplish? I haven't heard that. Have you delivered? I hope that you remember that to make our town successful, the governing board and the management team has to work together. You have a plan for them. They have an obligation to fulfill your plan. And then you also have an obligation to make sure they deliver it to you and to us. And I hope that you, at some point of time, make it clear to them and hold them accountable, and we will hold you accountable.
Thank you, John. John, did you want to speak on this?
Yes. One quick comment. Come on up, Senator. Under the roads that have a surface, an open surface, the concept of improving them is in keeping with maintaining roads throughout the town. If you have a dirt road, you found to maintenance, grading, fill, etc. If you have an open road, you can't go in there with a grader and fix it. You can't go in there with fill and fix it. You've got to work on the surface that's there. So it's the same concept applied throughout the town. It just happens we have these three kinds of roads that we can't go in any other way to maintain them except to provide a surface that's similar, some kind of fix. So I look at it as maintenance, even though from a perspective of how you classify something, it could be capital, and that's what those roads could be because you're improving their life. So I don't intend to, my perspective is not homogeneous the town roads, it's trying to provide maintenance to the roads that we have.
John?
John Ryan, 3508A Road. Just to amplify what Councilman Rock had just mentioned, the resurfacing of the open roads basically means to patch the potholes that have developed, put the resurfacing sealer on the roads, and to rebuild the humps as necessary, and to use some fill to level the road edges so that they don't unnecessarily deteriorate or puddle and get undermined. Also, just to address Bill Louder's concern, I think the focus always ought to be on public use easements rather than titling to the town. And the easements are sufficient to clarify some of the landowner liability issues. Those become the issues of the town or the water control district when those easement rights are confirmed. And that's really what the surveys are doing, is confirming the road surface that's being worked on, and that is the direct responsibility of the town or the water control district, and to a significant extent that relieves the landowners of some homeowners' liability, because I think it's only by the grace of God that some of the accidents that have occurred have not involved the landowners in the litigation that the district has had to contend with in the past, and that the town may very well contend with in the future.
Thank you, John. George, you want to speak on this?
George Burns, 1544 B Road. I wanted to speak about the priorities you're speaking of, and then the RFP you're about motion over. As far as the priorities, the previous comments where there's not enough people that come out and express their concerns is there with you guys. I'm not sure how you're going to come up with the priorities. If it were me, priorities would be complaints first. If you're getting complaints on the road, like Compton, Bryant, people want it done. That's an obvious priority. The other priorities, like collecting canal, I'm not sure where that priority lies. I realize we'd like to have a nice road like we have on North Road, but the contractor isn't in town, and to do that little section is going to cost you. And if you did want to get those types of budget numbers, we're going to have an engineer that's coming on board with the town. He can put these budgets together real quick without going for an RFP. Not that I'm trying to lighten the load for the staff, but an RFP for the resurfacing and to include the collecting canal it seems like you get a better price just getting the price on the resurfacing. So your priorities, I think, would be complaints first, existing problems, like the obvious problems that happened during the last flood. You've got roads out here that are 2 or 3 feet underwater because you have no drainage. You could put a brand new road in, and then you won't get the life out of it because you don't have the proper drainage on these roads. The last thing I wanted to mention, if you are getting these easements, if you are going to go that route, get more than just the road, because the roadways are more than just the road. It's the drainage that you need for each one of these roadways, and you need them on both sides of the road. When you did the OJM projects out here, because you only maintained the dirt road, that's all you were allowed to work on. After some convincing of the engineer, all the drainage improvements were done. All of them were done on private property. I'm glad they were done. But if you are going to do the easements thing, try to get more than just the road issues. I'm not sure how it works on Marcella, whether or not they can, that sounds like a really easy process where all the residents got out, they signed it all over, but on a road like that, can you go in and fix a flooding problem that they had? And as far as the surfacing, there's other types of resurfacing. The contractor that you had hired last week to do these OJMs is in Jupiter Farms, and they're doing this microchipping. It's a different kind of resurfacing, and I can't remember how long the guy guarantees it, but he has a guarantee with that resurfacing. I think you guys should look into it. It's a cost-effective way to resurface your roads. Thanks.
Thank you. No more comments?
I'll second Jim's motion to are accused for confidence of Brian resurfacing it and also claims.
Roll call, please.
Brackett,
Yes.
Liang,
Yes.
and Gerald.
Yes.
Just a point of order on that. Are you really talking an RFP or are you talking a bid?
Well, I thought it was our.
Well, I mean, do you want to just procure it?
Just bid it.
I mean, you could bid it, right? I mean, I think.
The simplest way is what I'm looking for.
The one, our code says you do things by ITB, you do things by RFP, you do things by RFQ, and you bid. So we'll just do it, we'll put it out for bid consistent with our code. That's the way I interpreted your motion. So if it turns out that it's mislabeled in your bid, in your motion, it's going to be done by whatever label is appropriate by our code.
Okay. You need a roll call?
Yeah.
Let's move on to number 3, gas taxes.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. On this one, we have a couple of different issues. In terms of the backup, I would point you to page 11, which is the road jurisdiction analysis for the gas tax distribution, which we'll talk about that. That's A in your outline. And then you were handed the management comment letter, that's item B. And also another item we put in, we talked about it a little bit before, but that's just the proposed scope of services relative to updating the comprehensive plan relative to the capital improvements. So that's what you have as part of your agenda. The first item, and Mr. Garrett, if you would get the map, is in position it, so right here, Sue, that the council can see it. That is the current gas tax map that was provided to us this year. And what we've been in the process of looking at it, we do have to provide a response. I don't know if I'd call it a certification, but it's basically a response with our feedback back to the county so that they in turn can provide the information to the state. And in the process of our review of the roadways, that is where Mr. Garrett handed out to you tonight this handout, which is the questionable town roads. You talked about a couple of them earlier. But obviously, especially if we're talking about gates and things like that, we should probably go through them maybe one by one if you'd like. But obviously, if they're gated and they're not being used as a public roadway, then they really ought to come off the map that being the case, there's really no question about that. Our estimate, I believe, the roadways in question total about 2 miles of roadway length, so you'd be taking it down from when it's 117.27 to 115.27. These roadways aren't addressed. And so with that, I'll turn that part of it over if you want to have a deliberation or further discussion on the handout related to the questionable town roads.
Do we have time to contact property owners on those roads before we make a response to the county?
Well, we do. We probably have the rest of this week, and I would say by next week we need to have a letter that the mayor or vice mayor would execute back to the county, letting them know the status of our review of the gas tax. We could probably get that by the beginning of next week. And that's what I said, around the 26th, which is like next Friday.
Which means we have this meeting as a council.
That's correct.
That's a little short to give us a short lead to say you've got to do it now, and then come up tonight with some roads in question and say, well, you've got to make a decision without being able to do what you have to do, which is contact the residents. That disappoints me. But do we have a second pass at a response? Can we send a response in based on what we have been certifying, if you will, for the last few years, and have a second, if we were to come back after our next meeting with information relative to what the council's instructed town management to do on these questionable roads, that we could then send something else into the county and say we have further reviewed and have decided something different?
Well, we can contact the folks that are listed in the letter that's in your attachment, and see what kind of direction they give us.
I mean, at this point, my consideration is what we've been doing, if we don't really have enough time to go back to some of these questionable areas, get a response back where the council can act, then we certify or we respond and say, yes, those are the roads in the town, and that's our response. If there's an option to come back after the fact with a possible modification within a reasonable time, then we can do, well, in either case, we do the first. Because I don't see that we have the choice and to say, that's the list of town road we have. And that's what we submit back to you for gas tax. And then later, we come back with, if we have the option, modify. Otherwise, I don't see any options we have tonight to do what we should do. Because I can't make a change on just this picture of what we've been doing for the last 6 years, unless I have more information. And as I think Vice Mayor commented on, this is a new gate on Sally Valley, for example. I think we need to pursue that. But if we only have tonight before this deadline, then I think then the council, I would recommend that we go forward and agree to the list of roads that we've been using for 5 or 6 years, and that's the list of roads that we submit back to them.
With all due respect, Councilman, I don't know what another meeting would solve anyway. That map is the same map we've been improving year to year to year. The question is, we are taking it upon ourselves to attempt to identify if roadways aren't living up to what they were supposed to do under the gas tax. So I think the question is, we can try to resolve those matters that we have before you. If we can't, we'll do the best we can. If we can't resolve them, we'll be letting the vice mayor or the mayor know that this is what we have to send in. I mean, there's not a lot of room there. There's, 8 roads that we've been able to identify. It's basically the same map that you've been sending in year to year to year.
Which is what I just said. We've been doing it for 5 or 6 years. We will continue to do it.
If you
Because
seem
we
to
don't
indicate we
see.
need another meeting, I'm not sure what you need another meeting for.
Well,
That's why I'm reacting here.
So if we resolve it, you're saying, I think, then, with that comment, that we give to the town mayor or vice mayor the authority based on what comes out of this review, the authority to modify what this list is inclusive of, based on this list being researched or looked at, and the town management then providing feedback to the mayor and or the vice mayor, depending who's acting. Is that what you're saying?
Extend feedback that we're providing to the county.
But the council is not going to meet again to decide anything different than what this roadway, this list of roadways is, before the date you have to respond. Is my
What you're deciding tonight is to allow the vice mayor or mayor to sign the letter that would be drafted, providing the feedback to the county.
What I think, going back to the conversation we had about the roads that should be included in the list, what we have this year, we haven't had in the previous years, we've been reviewed is we have before you some documentation that we've had some issues with some of these roads. Because we have a deadline of Friday, it may be best, and it's because you are dealing with only 2 miles of your 117, is to tonight maybe approve that map, subject to the review of these 9 documented issues. Any that are resolved before the deadline will remain on that report. Any that are unresolved will need to come off. And that can be done until whatever deadline will give it. So if town manager can talk with the county engineer and get the time past April 26th, that would give more time to resolve it. If they don't get the time past April 26th, and wherever we are on the 26th would be what we would certify. But I do think instead of just doing what you've done because we have these 9, I think the better course is to approve it subject to resolving these 9, whatever gets unresolved by whatever that deadline is, comes off the report that we give to the county.
I would like to make a motion to that, except with the addition of, I want also our town attorney to address the roads that are left identified as having come off as meeting a criteria that he would accept as meets private road criteria.
Well, I'll tell you right now, no indications that access is limited, no gates, no signs. That's what that federal guidelines say.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't want to deviate from that.
Right, and those problems can be solved. When you say no gates, and I'm thinking you're talking about a closed gate. If they've got a gate and it's open, then I would consider that a public right of way. The one gate we're talking about on Sally's Alley, okay, the man's probably got a dozen huge cows and stuff. So I can see the purpose of having a gate, okay, not necessarily keeping it closed 24 hours. When the cows get out, he wants to contain them to his property. So my main concern would be approach the resident, and if he's got that gate closed 24 hours or he's got a lock on it, that's a different story. So that's what I'll be looking for. The same gate, if it's open, then I'm satisfied with it being a public right of way. As long as PBS, so they don't have to get out of the car and open the gate.
Mike, the other question, what constitutes a sign that would make it public or private road?
Well,
because
obviously, a sign that says private road.
The sign that says it's a private road.
No trespassing private road would be a problem. Residents and guests only would be a problem. Because it implies that it's not there for folks. It's not just that it's express, it implies that it's limited. Private road, restricted to residents and guests only, residents and guests only.
So the question I have is,
private road, no trespassing.
if one person on that road out of 8 wants to put a sign up, they have that, they now put that road considered public versus private.
We have to look at it on a case by case. I don't know where these roads are in relation to it, but yeah, that could be a problem. At least in the short term, while because we have the deadline here and I have the federal statute, I think, we would have to look at that.
Because the issue would be giving up maintenance is something that people on that road should be allowed to decide.
I understand.
And if it's simply somebody putting up the sign that decides to put up a sign, I don't know if that's criteria to say this makes it a private road by itself, just a single sign by a single party.
But I would suggest that's what the town management company has been concerned about all along. These town roads that are, again, easements cobbled together, because you could have that happening on a number of roadways if we don't get the situation resolved. It could be a yearly occurrence.
Well, Well, first of all, I'm not talking about a number of roadways, I'm talking about just this list, but on this list, if somebody makes a determination they want to put up a sign because they like the idea of calling it something that it may not be, and if our criteria, at least some of our other criteria adopted, that we've adopted, and I thought was based on some of the federal information, was it's used, it's public use for the services. I don't remember the rest of the list that you have. But those things, if they still go on, would you lose the garbage collection? Do you lose those services that you would?
You might lose it for points beyond. I have to look at it. I have to look at it case by case.
Because somebody's putting a sign up and it takes away services for the rest of those on people, I don't think it's going to make it a private roadway. But I understand, we could also take it off, the gas tax be safe. But
Well, we resolve the issue.
And then later on, resolve the issue, we'll have to add it back possibly, but you don't want to take service away from the vast majority of people on the roadway because somebody puts a sign up.
It's unique.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Vice Mayor.
Question, can we vote tonight to go ahead and accept this gas tax map just like we've done for the last 6, 7 years? And then to work on our problems. I noticed this letter, if I'm correct, came in February. All right, and now we're hearing about the problems. And I'm glad we're hearing about them because next year we can, between now and next year, we can solve all these problems. So my question is to legal, is can we accept the same map that we've accepted for the last 6 years and take care of it tonight and then work on problem solving? And if it is 2 miles that we feel like we don't deserve gas tax money for, then the worst scenario is we would have to pay that back.
I don't know how that would work, paying it back. I just think.
Okay, I'm not trying to make more problems.
I'm just, unfortunately, with the timing, it's nothing, again, that's why, maybe there's something to be done there. But from where I sit, you have some documentation here before the deadline to certify. And I think that the more, I guess, conservative approach would be to certify the map subject to resolving these by whatever deadline the town manager can get from the county. Maybe you may extend it past another week, another 2 weeks, maybe, the request was made because there's logistics. We're probably reporting deadlines down the road. And I'm sure that, it's put there for the best of intentions, but if there was an issue that they were made aware of that we wanted to try to work out before we gave them the final mileage, they may work with us on some extra time. But I think given the fact that we have some documentation this evening, that you should do it with what you've done in the past, subject to these issues being resolved. If they're not, at least this year, take them off, and then next year, if the issues are resolved, go back on.
And just for the record, Council, yes, Vice Mayor, you are correct. The inter-office communication from the county says February 2013. If you notice, there's not a date. In fact, they provided to League of Cities, who in turn gets it to us. I had a conflict, couldn't be at the League of Cities meeting in February. I called them and arranged for them to send it to us. As you see, it's handwritten on there. That's the date we received it, 3/12/13. So couldn't put it on the 3/19 meeting. We might have been able to get it on the April 2nd meeting, but we have been working this. So,
the one reason why I brought it up is, and I understand, and that's a good explanation, but now this year, I know that this comes out in February, so next year I would expect management to contact them and say, hey, where's our letter? We came out in February last year. You're dragging your feet, or do you have a letter for us? So no, that's the only reason I brought it up. No, I see where you read it. Problem.
All right, I'm still disappointed. Your point is, this February letter says April 26th. We are now in the week between, and this is our last council meeting. We make arrangements before this to make sure we address this, and that we were not given any kind of suggestions as specifics that would be questionable until the day of that wasn't set. So I'm disappointed, but I'll make a motion that we adopt the town road miles less those items that have been identified as questionable, and instruct the town management working with the town of Woodland staff to as many they can resolve between now and the time the letter has to go out, where the vice mayor or mayor will sign the letter to include those miles adjusted back in.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Rackett,
Yes.
Ewing,
Yes.
and Jerem.
Yes.
The next item relates to the management letter, and I think Mr. Underwood, you were going to talk about that?
Excuse me, Bill. Can we take a 5-minute break, please?
Yes.
One of the subjects is, it wasn't ours, right? Just stand and talk about it rather than any of us talk about
I know.
Don't even call me, I'm not taking that call.
Waiting on Sue, she just started the camera. All right, let's get started again. All right, we're on item number 3, gas taxes. Are we through discussing the gas tax map?
Yes, sir, we're on that. We're going to start the management comment letter, and Bill's going to address that.
Vice Mayor, Council, just real quickly, in this last year's audit, one of the reasons I guess that I'm here is relative to there's a comment in the that will be forthcoming. We have a draft right now. It basically states that they're recommending the town obtain guidance from the town attorney or the state on how the uses of funds, and then take appropriate action in the future or pass to fix those expenditures. Relative to that, basically, because when they came in, they did a test of expenditures, and what they found was a very large check that we wrote to the walk-on item, is that North Road, that got walked on one evening, and we moved forward and spent gas tax money on North Road without any background from the town management to say, wait a minute, let's do it another way. So what we're doing, what we're going to be responding is that we will address this with the town attorney in the future and eliminate this kind of a problem forthcoming. The issue being that we spent a good chunk of money and we do not have title or ownership or easement or anything else relative to that road, and that should be a road that the town puts on its assets as an asset item that we own, but we're unable to do that because we do not have access to the road for purposes of the town. So as a result, when he pulled that transaction, he said, okay, that's fine, but we could not capitalize the cost. And that's kind of where we're at, and I want to bring that to your attention, that that walk-on, that problem. I think it was about $140,000.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly the action that you may come back and request action from the council possibly reimbursing the gas tax fund from the general fund for that expenditure.
Any questions?
It's really, it's just a report.
Thank you.
Mike, you have
I just got a question, this is for the North Road. North Road is a district road, so why don't we put that on the list of discuss with the district, and that should resolve that issue.
Right, and Mike, I actually, I stepped up on that. I thought it would have been on the district road because it was, along with the new roads, but that.
Yeah, you know what it was, is because when we started this back in October, it probably wasn't thought of, because you had the 4 roads that were called Special Act. And those, those 4 roads, and then we knew about Compton, Marcel, and I think we overlooked the fact that we had done those gaps on North Road. And it made sense that fall within the definition of what we were going to deal with first with the district, the Ocean Road. They paid for the parts around the intersections, we filled the gaps. So it sounds like it can be resolved by asking the district to put North Road on the list of roads that they'll work on getting us a quick claim on. And Bill Shake has said yes, and so that should resolve the issue. Basically confirm what it was. I mean, you guys, it did come up quickly, but you did adopt a resolution making extensive public purpose findings for that expenditure. But in hindsight, it probably should have been probably discussed at that October workshop.
All right, do we need a motion for that?
Well, I think what you should do is do a motion to authorize me to work with the district's council to add North Road to that list, and to request the district do the same thing next meeting.
I'll make such a motion. And I'll add to that as a comment before it's second, that by raising it tonight, a representative from the board will probably ensure that it's part of the discussion if it's not brought up by the legal representative. So it'll be a double coverage.
Well, I didn't mean the legal representative would ask them to add it. I was saying you would, by your motion, would be conveyed that you adopted the motion to the board, that they adopt a similar motion at their next meeting. But I'll advise this.
Any more comments? Any public comments on this?
Roll call.
No, we do have public comments. Frank, you want to speak on 3A? Or no, that was a gas tax. We're done with that. Sorry about that.
No, Frank didn't get to speak on 3A.
Oh,
I'll do it in public comments.
okay.
So you have no more comments?
You had 3B also, management comments. Did you have any comments on that?
Public comments.
Public, okay. That's it. Roll call, please.
Rackett,
Yes.
Liang,
Yes.
and Gerald.
Yes. All right, moving on to number 4, progress and next steps related to the Loxahatchee Road Water Control District road transfer.
Can I just take that one? Or?
Yeah, Mr. Vice Mayor, before Mike covers, I think Mike gives us an update from our perspective. I would like to include board member John Ryan to be behind that as far as, an update from the board's perspective that could complement what Mike's report would be.
All right, John, do you have a comment on this also?
I'll follow Mike.
Mike?
Just, nothing tangible has really happened since my last update, but I have had conversations with the district council, and they are preparing the form of quitclaim deed to get to us to reserve, to convey that. I have not gotten that yet, but I expect to get that fairly soon. I also had conversations with them to encourage, or to explain to them that we're ready to go with Bryan and Compton roads, or I'm sorry, Compton and Marcella roads, but that we needed the district to reciprocate so that we could work together on it, because right now only one of us was dancing. And I think that was brought up at the last meeting, and I think that they got direction. So we've added those 2 additional roads, or 3 additional roads, to the extent, hopefully named it, that they'll work with me on Bryan. The list is growing, but the manner in which we're solving it is the same. So I think it's feel comfortable adding that list. What I need to see, though, of course, is the quitclaim deed document that they'll be provided, and have that reviewed by Mr. Duty in my office, who does our real estate work, and make sure that does satisfy him. He's comfortable with the fact that the district just give us what we have, and we can take it from there for what needs to be done from all of our perspectives and confirming that they are town roads. Adding North Road tonight, I think, helps as well. But I think, and also, don't have the first-hand knowledge of it, but I understand, and maybe Mr. Ryan can speak to this better, about the direction that was given as far as speaking to Southern Land and Timber, about whatever rights they may have to the roads, the areas of town by way of the, I forget which year it is, 1918 feet? 1918. There's been changes along the way with it, and, the district's council, not sure that we need anything from them, but, if they'll give us something, it's always good to get whatever you can get. So I don't know if they've had conversations with Southern State, and maybe with Southern Land and Timber, maybe that's why they're holding off and giving us a quick claim until they know exactly what it is, a quick claim. I think they do, but I will schedule a meeting or call with Mary to occur within the next week and a half, so that I can provide you a more tangible memo within the next couple of weeks of what we're at.
Thank you.
Since we're heading north, would it make sense to ask them to add questions, since we're planning roads are being fair for the rest of the collectors?
We did that, I think,
Yeah. Did they do that at their meeting? Did they add collecting canal as well?
Let John, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yes, collecting canal was,
John Ryan, 3508 A Road. This afternoon, Steve Yoy and I had a discussion with Mary and John Wade, one of their real estate attorneys, and Charlie Shadow. What we were doing was clarifying the elements of the cover letter that we're writing to Southern States, along with the form of quitclaim deed. The reason for the quitclaim deed is that what we have now is a right-of-way deed which contemplated work to be done over a 2-year period of time to establish public use of roads and canals as part of the development of Waxahachie Grove. The letter that we're sending to them is not only marking up the right-of-way deed to identify the canals and roads specifically, but also providing them with a 1925 replat of the groves that confirm the work that we did. And it was all certified by the same surveyor that did the original work for Southern States Land and Timber, Thorson, and the original sales or original manager of the Waxahachie Groves project, George Bensel. Steve Yoey's had a couple of conversations with him. We calculated approximately the land area involved in the various roads, and it's a little less than 220 acres total. And of course, with the layout of the roads and canals, it's not contiguous. And the quitclaim basically says whatever they didn't give to us and that we didn't earn under the conditions that we satisfied in the right-of-way easement deed will be conveyed by a quitclaim deed. And we just felt that, when we turn over the documents to the town, even though, as Town Attorney Willow said, there may not need to be additional rights. It makes it a little easier if the town says, okay, the successor to the same company that gave the town a conditional right-of-way deed has now given them a quitclaim deed for any remaining interest that they had. It's not the equivalent of a fee simple warranty deed or anything else, and I think that we're aware of enough transactions over enough periods of time that all we're really trying to do is just to make the right-of-way easement deed a little bit more of a well-understood document when we quitclaim it to the town. Now, I certainly agree that the North Road segments ought to be added to the turnover. The only thing in my mind that I think we still need to think through is that our practice had been that because the district was essentially contracting the roads and working on the rights that we have, that we would be joining with the town and make a formal conveyance at the end of the construction. But I'm not sure that, and the reason for that was we were making the conveyance in terms of the final maintenance map that was surveyed, and based on that, there just may be timing on the actual quitclaim conveyance of the collecting canal, but that's the only question. Other than that, I think that we're making progress on getting the paperwork together. Mike said the quitclaim of whatever interest we have as the public body that received the dedication of Compton and Marcella is being worked on by our attorney. You're working on the Bryan Road paperwork, and I think the district, as has been said several times, is just trying to get first things first and then take the next step and to get these things conveyed, get these road segments conveyed to the town.
Thank you, John. Frank gave me this before my break, and I apologize, I forgot. Does anybody have any black Ford Taurus in the parking lot? Has it had its lights on if they're not still on?
There.
Oh, 11, okay. Well, that means it transferred. Any other questions? Any public comments? All right, then we'll move on to number 5. Compton and Bryan Road, they've already been discussed as far as surfacing, but under 5, you got 5B, the drainage ditch, and I believe a contractor made a comment earlier that if we redo the road, and they had a problem last year with flooding because of the rain that we had, I would like to see get a bid on cleaning out the drainage ditch. I think by May 7th we'll have our invitation to bid completed and back in front of the council. I've looked at Compton Road. There's a lot of Compton Road's ditch that can be maintained by the same way the district does their ditches and stuff. I think that we need to start out and dress it up the best we can and see where the problem lies, and that is if the council even agrees. But before we put a lot of money into the road, I would hope that we could do something about the drainage ditch. Our workshop, we talked about 2 priorities. We talked about drainage in Loxahatchee, and I'm talking about trying to get drainage good for everybody, especially when we have access to do it along the road or whatever. We've got the Southern Boulevard pond sites and stuff that we're working on. I made that meeting, and that was very interesting. I'm glad I made it because it educated me a lot on what they're looking for, and they are looking for input from this town. And the people that's lived here for years and stuff and know where the flooding exists and things, these are the ones that need to be put some input into it. So basically, I would like to discuss that, if there's any comments from the council or the public as far as the drainage ditch on Compton Road. And like I said, my direction would be to get a price on it. We've talked about it for so long. It does not cost to get a procurement cost of what it would be, and that will influence the council. If it's outrageous, then we may not go with it. But if it's a fair price and we can improve drainage from Folsom to F Road, then I feel like with the revenue that we've got coming in, that's a project that we need to take on. But that's only my concern. So, any comments from the council? Jim?
As I recall, the problem on Compton with drainage was with the drainage to the west, I thought, that was clogged. It was a matter of just the water not having an opportunity to leave that ditch. So backed up along with all the rest of the water that we got, and that particular drainage culvert, once cleared, allowed free drainage. So I certainly would agree that we, in any road that we resurface, to have a look at, inclusive an estimate of what was suggested as to make sure that the drainage is working. Because I recall when we went through that, it was a matter of that culvert was blocked, and it wasn't so much that the drainage ditch along Compton was a problem, but it was it had no place to go, and it probably contributed to some of the flooding of the yards. But as we all know, all our canals were overbanked, so even if you had a place clear culvert initially, you had more water coming over the bank than you were able to get water into the canal anyway. So, but once that water dropped, they did have a problem with that culvert. So I guess we would probably want to, if we can include an assessment of, for any of the roads, an assessment of cost to improve the drainage if it's needed, because I don't know if once you clear that culvert, you have a drainage issue anymore on Compton. I don't know that. So certainly, however we can assess that, I don't want somebody coming in here and telling me you need something new when it really doesn't need to be done. So I guess we need our engineering services again as a consultant to what.
You are correct. It is an issue that we can take up once we have our town engineer on board. And at the next meeting, you'll be going ahead and awarding the bids relative to the awarding the low bidders the bids relative to that type of work. So we can have both those entities look at it, and we'll have a better idea, and try to get a cost estimate as well.
And go ahead.
Yeah, like I mentioned before about working on some of these drainage problems, and what was mentioned by a member of the public is that before I would approve working on these drainage issues, I want an easement that we're allowed to work on a drainage easement that the town, the public drainage easement the town's allowed to work on. So that way there's no question about spending funds on private property.
That would be the other component, but the actions the district's going to be undertaking, that actually the final part of the puzzle in terms of going ahead and going forward.
You're right. I mean, the district's going to give us what they have, but I don't think that includes if those legal descriptions included this culvert or the ditch. I don't know that did.
But I do remember the folks on Compton, they said they were more than willing to grant us an easement. So at least Compton, it seems it shouldn't be too difficult. But any other roads that does or that do have drainage issues, I'm looking to get an easement for.
And I agree with you, Ryan. And like we talked about a while back, that when we have a town road, if we can protect that road by having proper drainage along that road, we can justify spending the funds to clean out that drainage ditch. And that's back to how many people does it serve, whether they're flooding or not, and just improving. And the one thing I'm looking for the future is, and I haven't seen it on 22nd Road North, when we clean out the drainage ditches and stuff, it'd be nice if the residents would try to maintain them. And but that's something we'll talk about in the future. Any questions, public comments? This is 5A. Bill, we talked about resurfacing it, but do you have?
That's 5A, it's public comments.
Okay, public comments.
The other 5A.
All right, no other questions. We'll move on to Bryan Road's been taken care of. This is,
excuse me, Mike, are we clear on anything you need to do with Bryan Road, or?
Well, yeah, you're clear on what I need to do.
We are clear what you need to do? Are you clear on what you need to do?
I'm clear on what I need to do. Yeah, all kidding aside, we talked about that earlier, we have the form, and we're gonna start, the next step is to get in touch with the property owners and let them know what we're doing and get the surveyor on to tell us where that road is. So we're good.
Now, we do have, if need to be, anybody on Bryan Road, if you're looking for somebody to help us get signatures, for example, if we get to that point, I have several people that, short of the entire population, there are several people that would make that happen.
Okay.
So I would share those names with you as you need them.
Okay. Thank you.
Mike, I did have a question on Bryan's Road. Matter of fact, Mark called it. Mark, what was that we were talking about? It was F Road.
Oh, yeah, I talked with Mike about that. That was the Clinton Canal area, yeah. We got it covered.
And we may do something similar on that, you know, that first initial letter for Bryan or for the other roads as well, say, hey, this is what we're gonna do, and here's a copy of the document you have to sign. You know, so, you know, that letter can be, was put in there as for, you know, both those forms, even though they're written for certain projects, are what we would use as templates for the other, for all the other ones. So, we'll just make sure we get the right letters.
All right, moving on to number 7, red light at Southern Boulevard and D Road. I had this put on the agenda because of that meeting with the pond sites and stuff with the state. Mentioned it to the state, and Mark was there, Tom was there, Mr. Yohe was there. Nobody with the state really was concerned about red light at D Road and Southern. They said basically in their game plan, they were going to concentrate on the existing red lights. That would be F Road and B Road. My personal opinion is D Road is the main street of Waxahachie Groves. When they shut down, when they came through with the new Southern that we have now, they shut down Waxahachie Drive, which used to go through. D Road is a very dangerous site, like it is right now. When they make it a thorough fairway, it's going to be unbelievable. The other morning I was trying to get out at the post office, but the trucks that use Southern Boulevard, that's the most dangerous, is the dump trucks and the 45-foot tractor and trailers. They haven't gotten to the point, but I think we as a town, we need to get involved right now with concentrating on talking to the state, whether it's a resolution. In other words, this is where I need advice from management, lawyers, but we need to start pushing the state right now. We need to let them know, and that is, if the residents agree with it. You may not agree with me, but I think it's a dangerous intersection. I think when they come through and make it a thoroughfare, that we need a red light there in the middle of our town. That's where I stand on that. Mark, do you have any comments?
No, I'm just ready to take whatever action that you feel is necessary in your direction.
Go ahead, Tim.
Part of my question would be, what action do you think either of you would take, that we could take, or the means of which is available to us to address this issue? I mean, just a letter? Do we have, what's the process, I guess? So who can we talk to that really makes a difference?
Let me just take that first, and then I'll toss it to Mike. I have established a pretty good working relationship with the engineers on the project who have been doing the pond siting, and the Vice Mayor is starting to establish that same relationship. But I can call them, because the next pond siting meeting isn't until the 23rd, so I'd rather not wait. I'd rather try to call them and just to, if that's the council's will, to at least let them know that, this is something that the town's looking at seriously. Is there any way? I mean, I would think, while they're doing the PD&E study now, I mean, I know right now their concentration is ponds, but I would think they ought to be looking at, the lights as well. So that would be my suggestion. I can do that if that's what you want.
Is that April 23rd, they're having the next meeting? Mike?
I mean, I think that's a good place to start. I mean, anytime you ask the upper crust folks, you're going to ask whether the lower crust folks have looked at the issue and whether there were any issues with it. I think the town council always has the prerogative to, and you've done this in the past, expressing your preference to other agencies by adopting a resolution in support of or urging the installation of the light or whatever. So the council can collectively do that sort of thing, and at some future time after the preliminary discussions are are done, you can provide direction to have a resolution brought back to you and directed to the right folks. I'm sure in those conversations, they can also come in with the right folks who need to be made aware of the issue. And that would probably be a good step for the council to take as a whole, as opposed to basically telling the town manager to write a letter. When you do a resolution, it's a public expression of the council as a whole. So that's probably a time to have the conversations first.
Have the conversation and then draft a resolution as a result of the conversation?
Well, I would have the conversations first and report back to you what they are, and at that point, we can decide whether the resolution and to whom it should be directed to.
Yeah, I'm always interested in, knowing the vice mayor is always interested in wanting to move things along. So is there something you might want to do, giving you direction with combining with the contact, and if it seems appropriate at that time to also draft a resolution, or leaving it, and maybe just leaving it entirely up to discretion of town manager, that
Well,
he thinks it's appropriate to do a resolution, and he could have it come back to us next week.
Yeah, you could have this conversation, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but if there's a way to try to figure out whether it would be useful to have something from the council, and they give them, that's probably a good idea, then we can have something ready for your May 2nd? 7th, I'm sorry, yeah, plenty of time to get something.
I concur with that. I mean, I'll talk with Tomas Ruiz, who seems to be the head engineer with that, and I'll see what kind of guidance he can give me. If it's clear that they would love to have that resolution, then Mike and I will get together and have it for the first meeting in May.
Okay, so that'll be by consensus. Who would give you that direction?
Yeah.
You want a motion, or?
Yeah, we would make a motion tonight.
All right, I'll make a motion to direct Mike to make the contacts relative to Mike, Mark. You got M&M down here, so I'm sorry.
I have a brother named Mark, so it's easy.
Yeah, Mark, contact, go through whatever channels he has in terms of relative to Light on Southern Boulevard and D Road, and then with that, the discretion to adopt for resolution for our next meeting if it so deems appropriate.
Awesome.
Roll call, please. Okay, public comments, and let me make one more comment. I talked with probably 4 to 5 people that were working with the state, and I felt like we had good communications, and I felt like, and they're working with the state now. They don't have the final say-so, but they said a couple of things. They said the one thing that we could start out with, and it's probably too early right now, would be a traffic study of that intersection. And the other thing is, we've had some bad accidents, but I don't think we've had enough to help us out. That's probably before you came out here, but we've had some bad accidents where they've routed the but anyway, but a traffic study pulls a lot of weight with the state, but where we run into trouble with the traffic study is we used to do traffic studies on Okeechobee when we were trying to get approval of a red light at Okeechobee and D Road. And then finally, because of the pressure and because of communicating with the county and Commissioner Santa Maria, they finally, after years of wanting a light and telling us no, they evaluated all the roads coming into Okeechobee instead of just D Road. But the one thing about D Road, I know there's a lot of residents, normally they would use D Road depending on the time of day, but because of the danger, they go out of their way to hit the light at F Road or the light at B Road. So when we do a traffic study, that's where we've got to get the community to come together and be very careful and use D Road as much as possible. And that's just the common sense approach, where when somebody's doing a traffic study and we want something that's going to benefit our residents, then let's put a little effort towards there. But that was the other thing they suggested. They said, start with a traffic study. And I made a comment to them that, traffic studies aren't always in our favor. And they said, well, they knew that. But I said, I believe that politics pulls a lot of weight. Who communicates with the state, who pushes it, and they agreed with me. Politics they do pull a lot of weight. And our concern as taxpayers and stuff. We do a roll call? Oh, I'm sorry, public comments, like I said, I'm learning. Let's go with, Ken? Yeah, I got one. Howard, you'll be next. And Bill, you'll be after Howard.
Thank you, Vice Mayor and Councilman. I firmly support a light at D Road in Southern for various and sundry reasons, and I will go through those right now. I've got a third item that they might want to add to the list. First, our residents need to have the ability to turn left or right when exiting D Road on the Southern. If they want to go east, they want to go east. They don't want to turn right, go up and make a U-turn and come back down, because the nearest U-turn would be at the post office. Well, that's another site that has a lot of wrecks. All right, so we need the light there also to slow the traffic down, because the trucks get a running start from down, it's this way, Wellington Trace. The light turns go, and they all take off slowly until they build up some momentum. And then they're running past the speed limit, I think. When they get to D Road, they don't care if you're in the way or not. They will just blow their horn and run right through. The same thing happens at B Road. And by the way, they had a wreck there yesterday. I don't know if you know that yet or not, but I saw it. So anyhow, we need to slow the traffic down. And the trucks tend to be the heavyweights, the 800-pound gorilla in the room when it comes to that road. The next thing is blinking lights. Now, what I'm talking about, if you go west on Southern, on the other side of Seminole Pratt Whitney Road and on the other side of White Fences Road that goes to Line Country, the state has got these signs installed that start going off, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds before the light actually turns red to stop the traffic. They warn you that the light ahead of you is going to turn red. So they are alerted to the fact that, hey, they better slow down. You've got blinking lights out here on Southern. You've got blinking lights on the overpass on Belvedere. When you come west over that overpass to Skis Road, they've got the lights blinking so that you know once you get over the overpass, there's a red light there. So if they can have blinking lights, why can't we have blinking lights alerting to D Road and B Road that, hey, you got to stop. It's not blow the horn and run through the intersection. I'm firmly agree with a red light on Southern, and I will help in any which way I can.
Thank you, Ken. I can verify that we have some fatalities at B Road in Southern, because I worked a couple of them myself when I was working. And when those trucks, when those semis, they leave F Road, I mean, they're mad because they slow down anyway. By the time they hit B Road, most of the accidents was a poor car in front of a dump truck that couldn't get out of the way, and they realized, oh man, there's a red light there. So, good points, Ken, thank you. Howard and then Bill.
Howard Barn, E Road. I think it's real important that we remember that the Department of Transportation came and visited us way back when Dave Autry and Bill Lauer were sitting up there, and they specifically let us know that this was a courtesy call only, just to let us know what their plans for the future Southern Boulevard were. and that not only included 8-laning it, but it included cutting off major access from our community to Southern Boulevard. So we're pretty much, if we do not get a light at D Road and Southern Boulevard, we're going to be stuck with Folsom and B Road as the only way to get in and out of our community from Southern Boulevard. And so, to me, it's imperative to do it, not only for all the reasons that have been going over thus far, but in order to continue to have the right to leave through D Road and have access. So, I mean, if this town needs to be put on notice, I know I avoid that intersection like the plague, but hell, if we need a traffic study, I'll go by it 5-6 times a day. I mean, I could take that road to Home Depot. I could take that road for all kinds of errands, but I go out of my way to avoid it. I think we need to publicize the traffic study when it happens so people can use it that would have normally used it and want to see a light there. But we got to hold tight the fact that we got to keep Southern Boulevard open to our community, and there's no better road than D Road for that, and that's one of the roads they plan to cut us out from.
Thank you, Howard. Bill?
Yeah, Howard is right. They did come, and they talked to us, and they told us to, be prepared when this comes through, that they're going to cut some roads off. Believe we were promised, we moved out here a little after that, and it was second or third hand knowledge that when they 4-laned this, we were supposed to get a light at Loxahatchee Plaza. You probably remember that. Okay. But I don't think there's a light out there, is there?
No.
Or Palms West Plaza now. Loxahatchee Country Plaza, what it should be called. But anyway, yeah, a light at D Road, and Southern is, got to get it in now. If we get that one in now, maybe we can keep it. And because I remember the DOT guy here, and said, oh yeah, that's not going to be a problem. You just come out, you make the right, you move over some lanes, make a U-turn. Buffalo chips. Anyway, if the traffic count is done with the little strip, we'll just...
Back and forth. Just be careful of the semis.
Mr. Vice Mayor, if that's the end of the public comments, I mean, I identify with everything said about you will not go down, try to go east off of D Road. It is just crazy. I go west because I can use that little turn lane into the post office. That's it, but I got to come back. And it is absolutely, I mean, beyond what we really need at D Road and Okie, we do need something, because D Road and Okie is the only light that I think we get some relief to just get on Okeechobee. But definitely, that is a crazy place, and I'm sure we all avoid it. And Howard's pointed out, I guess, trying to make it town aware that we're doing a traffic study. I'm not sure. If we possibly come up with another way to do the traffic study, so possibly we can capture everybody that goes along Collecting Canal. When they get to that point, they say, I'm not going straight, I'm going to turn. And we can somehow collect that traffic that would really probably somewhat represent those that are avoiding it, but I don't know how to do it. But definitely we move ahead with whatever we can do, because that is an absolute crazy place. And you double those lanes, oh my God, I just can't imagine trying with the improvements that they're going to do. I mean, today, and I'll pretty much try cutting across the road if I had to, but I just can't imagine having a future. I mean, it's just crazy. I'd have to go get Howard to drive you across the road.
Howard avoids it.
Any other comments, council? Roll call, please.
Liang,
Yes.
Jira,
Yes.
and Racket.
Yes.
Passes 3-0. All right, moving on to 24th Court North. We've got a Lorenz's here, and I've got to ask you, do you go by 24th Court North, or do you go by 24th Circle North? Circle. Okay. And a comment to go with that is 24th Circle North. There's two of them. It's actually the 2nd and 3rd Street north of Okeechobee, east off C Road. Now, the fire department maps, they say that one is a court and one is a circle. And I stopped by there the other day to tell them, say, hey, when you see the first one, expect the second one, and you may be taking the wrong one. Those are things that we need to try and fix later on. But according to the maps and stuff, they're saying different than what our signs are saying. So it's kind of confusing. Okay, let's, does the council have any questions on 24th Circle North?
Because that road doesn't connect, is it wise to possibly have two names? Because if you get a circle and circle on both ends, and you can't get there except from the C road, it seems like the name might need to be separate, or different, because you can't get there from here, so to speak. The other question was, I didn't know if this was on here to include anything about that parcel of land that was sold and the fence being erected and the road that was getting half removed, so to speak, from access. I don't know if we were going to talk about that as part of this too.
Yeah, the one reason why I put it on here, because I could justify it as a road to talk about. That was another problem I was going to introduce.
Okay, let's stay with the first one.
Before I start discussing it, I'd like to see if there's any public comments from the residents. Would y'all have any public comments?
Yeah, that's right.
Patrick?
Yeah, Patrick College, 24 Circle North. Property that you look here on the map, it shows what an overlay, whatever the picture was. But if you go to the survey, it shows it as a complete road. I think it was about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the fire department did have a map with the whole circle to include whatever it showed on the surveys. So I don't know where it got lost based on, because the overgrowth of brush, it was never a complete circle based on the survey maps themselves. So, and I think that's where the confusion becomes. It gets escalated on where the road begins and where the road ends. And so if you take a topographical map, it doesn't exist. If you take a survey, it exists. So, I mean, I have surveys dated back 1960s that show the road as a circle. So, because that area in question was considered Loxahatchee Manor, which was founded from the early developers of that area. So that's kind of why, with that road the way it is, it doesn't show a complete throughway. And that's where the confusion became a little more apparent.
Right, and I'm wondering if the first 24th Circle North, if they're going, their mailing address, it's saying circle.
I don't know, because with the county, I had to go to the county to even get the road established, because they had us on I think our address was 2528 C Road. We don't even touch C Road. For the longest time, we didn't exist until, I started making inquiries on, well, there's a road, here's the main road, what are we? And that's when the county, I don't know what they did. And then when you guys took over the town, how it incorporated after that, I have no idea.
And my question would be to management, and possibly Mike, is we've got an engineer coming on board. I don't know if that engineering, with direction of the council, if he could go over the survey maps and stuff. I don't know if legally we could even make that circle possible, because I know by state law or whatever, when you close something off for a period of time.
Eminent domain, that doesn't apply only if there's no knowledge of eminent domain.
Okay, but if that
closed off.
Anyway, I would think we'd need the engineer on board to see if there's anything we can do as a town to improve that situation.
All right, well, the engineer on board will certainly be helpful, Your Honor. Steve Yowie has been working with the folks out there, and I've talked to Barbara Lorenz as well, and I'll be attending the meeting. I think they have set up Friday.
Yes.
Friday.
And he has all the surveys of
Right.
all of the people all the way around, including those easements that go, you might have to talk some.
After Patrick.
In any event, we'll work with them. We talked, we told them that obviously we're going to undertake any kind of improvement in the roadway. I know because of the drainage problems they've had, I believe the district is looking at putting a culvert in there and alleviate some of the drainage concerns. There's also the possibility of moving the roadway north of where it currently exists. There's a ditch in there, and there's going to need to be some vegetation taken out. So Mr. Yohe and I have been working on it cooperatively, and I know he's been waiting, and I guess as Barbara's indicated, she's given him the information he needs. So I guess with this meeting Friday, we'll firm up what we need to do, but absolutely, once the engineer gets aboard, that'll be one of the first projects I'll be looking for them to give input on.
I mean, to me though, it's more, what is the road, where the road is. If everybody's road is attached to a complete circle, it's still a circle. Right? Even though it didn't exist because there's vegetation at the time, it's still a 30-foot easement that touches everybody's property. It just didn't go away. It's still a road.
Thank you. So, Ms. Lorenz, you want to just give us an update? That's very impressive. I wasn't expecting you to get all those surveys that quick. That's good.
State your name and your address.
I'm Barb Lorenz, and 24 Circle North. There were 16 different properties that touched 24 Circle, that whole road, all the way around. And right now, Mr. Yohe has 14 of them. No, 13 of them. We're still waiting on 3. One's looking for them, but Mr. Yohe said he was going to go down to the county and take a good look at the whole plat thing. So, and then be ready for it on Friday, our meeting at 2 o'clock.
Thank you. All right, Ken, and then Marge.
Ken Johnson, Blackman Canal. In behalf of what the previous people spoke about, I don't have privilege to that information. I do know this much. In behalf of the CERT team, that was a search and rescue team here in Loxahatchee Grove, right after the hurricanes, I went out and surveyed and drove every road in Loxahatchee Groves and made a listing of them. And the place that they're talking about is definitely a problem that needs to be resolved. I don't have all the data right here, but I've got it at home. The GIS system for the county was incorrect because I went to the GIS to find out information about that circle up in that area. You've got some homes that are on the southernmost road further east that go by a different address than the road sign says on C Road. Nobody knows where anything is up there, except for maybe these folks that have a survey. But from what I gathered, that the GIS was incorrect. The names on the roads out on C Road were incorrect. And because I gave to Fleet a complete listing of every road, every intersection in Loxahatchee Groves that were missing a correct sign. And that thing you couldn't figure out. So hopefully using their survey, you can figure something out. It's a nightmare.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Marge.
Marge Herzog, A Road. I remember when Larry and Pam Bosky lived in one of the homes back there, and when I visited them, I remember the overgrowth, and I remember that they had a fence that went in a different direction than the existing fence that's there now. And I think the fence was put up just as a convenience to square off things, and I believe the residents are aware of the fact that there is supposed to be a road there, which is not. And one of the things that needs to be addressed very definitely is the flooding, because that area definitely is negligent on the drainage.
Any other public comments? Council members?
It sounds like we've got two staffs working this problem, and it sounds like residents are working with them. I get the feeling like there's a comfort level that we're making some progress in getting cooperation, so hopefully that continues. I think one thing that, a positive thing that I know is going on and worth mentioning, because I will tell Mark if I think he needs improvement. I will tell Mark if I'm very pleased with the effort that's going on now with cooperation with the district and Mr. Yohe, and that's because of both parties working very well together. It's not a one-way street. So I know they've done well, and they're working problems together, and it seems to, it's a nice, I don't want to say change, but it's nice to see it happening, and it seems like we're going to have an opportunity to do more of it.
Right. A couple last comments. Me and Mark and Frank and Mr. Yohe and Mike Walker, we've all been out there and looked at the situation. The one thing I'd like to see as far as direction tonight, and I think Mark and them are making good progress, especially with the surveys and stuff, but Mike Walker is the field man for the water control district. Now, he came up with a solution. If this man that's fencing the property off, if he put that fence up, that road would be hindered greatly. Now, the simple fix, which would have to be done when we get it all surveyed and we bring the engineer on board and we see if we can make a circle. A simple fix right now, instead of waiting until we're desperate, is that bend you've got right there. You've got a big enough drainage ditch where, and I put in a request and it was denied, so I don't have a problem with that. But and Mr. Yohe stated that he would like to work with Mark, and that would happen at a later date. But I personally would like to see the council give direction to the town that the simple fix that would not hinder the work in the future is to take 2 loads of road rock material, put on that corner to, you've got either Mr. Morris said you have 30 or 60 foot easement there. It may have been 30.
30 there.
Okay, so you've got more easement, but you've got enough to where it wouldn't affect the drainage ditch you already have. You could make that road wide so that you wouldn't have to worry about it happening when the guy puts up his fence, and then we got to do a rush job, and it's hurricane season, it's raining and all that. So my request, work request, was that 2 loads of fill be dropped in that corner, and then the road be regraded so that you would have a good road you can depend on. Now the other request is May 7th, we should finalize the invitation to bid, and I don't have a problem waiting until then. They've done a good job as far as going out for bid for hedging and stuff, but it's back to the water control district. I believe they got the lowest bid, I'm not sure, but we'll find out on the 7th. But with their hedging tractor, they can hedge that drainage ditch right now, and we can improve the drainage ditch with just the mower. And then we have access to see if there's anything else that needs to be done. I think our priority and our biggest problem is the culvert that goes into Sea Road Canal. And but let the engineer come on board, and then let a professional decide on what's going to get you good drainage. But in other words, there's 2 things that we could do as a council. We could direct the water control board or tell management to go ahead and approve that request of 2 loads of fill and grade it in so that you've got the foundation there while you're waiting on all the other paperwork and stuff. And the other thing is the drainage district could go and they could bush hog that drainage ditch so we could see what we've got going on. Now the last time I looked at the drainage ditch, it had a bunch of, and Frank, you may know, that it had a bunch of stumps and had all kinds of loose debris between the edge of the road and the drainage ditch. And I noticed the guy that bought the property, he was clearing that out, and I don't know if it came from that or not, but that's a simple problem that we could solve as a council under our procurement. John Choquette has a dump truck with a hook and stuff like that. And I don't have any idea, I know it would be under our procurement costs, but he could go in there, we could bush hog the ditch with the drainage ditcher. And then John Choquette can go in there and start from one end to the other, and it would probably only take one swipe at the most, and he could pick all that loose stuff up and haul it off, and the improvement would be great, and it would give the engineer a better opportunity to see what's going on. So I'm looking for direction from the council as far as that. Because May 7th is a long ways off, and you've got the rainy season that's going to start coming in June.
Let me understand, so I better understand what you're, first of all, the work that you want done would be to have somebody clear that drainage ditch of the loose debris. Have bush hog also.
Bush hog first, so that along with, in other words, that bush hog is going to cut up anything from 3 to 4 inch limbs. So bush hog it first, and then have
cleaned out, and then a couple of loads of road rock and grading.
Right.
I hope that we were at a point where we select contractors, but we're not there yet. It's not that far off that we can be at that point, but I have a sense that you think there's an urgency to do something in the next week or two rather than wait until after May 7th. Knowing that that owner of that property is putting a fence up, at his discretion, he could close it, basically close the road up tomorrow if he continues that fence. And that would leave those folks nowhere to go in terms of getting out. So I look at it in light of that potential. If that was to happen, we need to try to act now. If it's something that we know is not going to happen right away, we're pretty comfortable, we're not going to get them to lose that access to the road, then maybe we can wait until May to get the work done. But my question is more, if they lose the access because Bella can't put that fence up, then we need to act on a basis of an emergency situation.
Just relative to the fence, we've been trying to get a number of contact. I know Barbara has told the gentleman to contact us, and if council gave us the direction to start code enforcement proceedings, we could go out there, because I don't believe that gentleman never got a permit from us, or at least from the county. If he went to the county would have asked us to do a zoning review on it, and we've had nothing. So technically, I think we could slow that fence down by virtue of at least getting the gentleman to go through the proper permitting in the county and through the town. But again, I don't have a complaint, so we've been trying to do it by cooperative means, but we haven't been able to establish the proper number. Do you have a number for me now? That'd be wonderful.
I need to turn all out.
Barb, you want to talk about this subject again?
Sorry.
That's fine. You're the expert, sir. Go ahead.
The
Name
fence,
and
Barbara runs 24 circles. The fence is not there, but instead of a fence, he used trees and put trees in to extend the fence. What was the number that you wanted?
Well, I think you had told him to call us. He has never called us.
I have his phone number. Yes.
If you give us that, we'll try to proceed. But I mean, we need to, if he ignores us, I need a complaint, or I need counsel to tell me, go ahead and, start code enforcement on him so we can get his attention.
I have a question, if I may ask. Stay there. I went down there the other day with those new trees, new palms that were growing, and I still was able to access the back properties. So we haven't achieved the closure to that road. I don't know what his plans are on fencing. Certainly if he goes outside those palms, it would close that road.
It's right outside the palms. It's like 6 inches outside the palms.
Okay, but he hasn't continued the fence, which would close that road off. The palms themselves have not closed the road to access, correct?
Well, depends on what you want to get down the road.
Okay, well, I went down there with SUV and I was able to get by the permit without a problem. That's changed in the last couple of days.
No, that's the same. My thing is a boat and a fifth wheel are back there and they can't get out with that corner. I don't know that we need them to come out, but.
So with the palms there, we are now already in a situation.
Yeah.
Well, that puts it in my mind emergency, and I think we need to move forward now. And I would authorize that we ask for work to be done at whatever the best means that town manager can come up with. I think we're at that point. We don't want to now have, we don't have another council meeting between now and 2 weeks from now. And I mean, I would not want to be able to say, I wouldn't anybody say, well, you sat by while you knew this potentially was going to happen, and now we have a road blockage issue, and we can't get out with whatever vehicle's back there. I mean, the fifth wheels, I didn't realize there was something back there. If it wasn't back there, maybe we should make sure they moved it before they put the bomb so they couldn't get back there. But I guess that's where my thinking is. I don't know what Brian.
And that's back to, I believe the man bought the property. He seems like he's a good neighbor. He could have put that fence up, and we seen where the survey markers were. He could have put that fence up, and we could have resorted to filing a code violation. But when you start throwing code violations at neighbors and stuff, it affects the neighborhood. He gets mad at you, and things just don't work out. If we can solve problems without putting a code violation on him, that's the way I want to solve it. And it's a very simple way to solve it, just like I said. Any other public comments? Frank?
Frank Shaw, Marcel Boulevard. Just to let the council know that the mower that does all the heavy brush cutting and all that, and the hedging is right now, it's down to transmission problems again. It's down in Davie. They don't know when it's going to be coming back here. So just keep that in mind. If you want it mowed, you may have to go to another resource to get that done.
Right. And Frank, a comment is, if we could get the mower now, just have Showkit come in there and pick up all the loose stuff, that would make it easier on the mower when it does get fixed and back in service. Thank you.
My only concern is if we're trying to dump rock in there, then you probably need to make it ready for rock.
No, it's ready for rock right now. Mike Walker's already said that he can put the rock in, make the road wider with what's existing. Because right around that corner is probably the cleanest area. There was one thing he may take out and he may not, and that would be a cabbage palm that would give him a few more feet.
Okay. Mark, you know the situation. You know that road could get closed off. Right now, we're told there's a couple vehicles back there that could not get out. I'm inclined to say let's fix it and not sit back and I don't know what the alternative is. And it's more of a pressing issue than just casual, we'd like to do it, kind of a thing. It sounds like it's now. Certainly, I would not want to have an emergency vehicle trying to get back there and can't. One of the EMTs or whatever, those vehicles are pretty wide. So, if we could get it cleared out, get the rock installed, have it graded, at least we have something now that it's not just thrown away. It's something that we'll work on in the future too, but limit it to that. I would like to suggest that we do that and support the Vice Mayor's request. I'm looking for Councilman Ryan's comment so I know where we're going.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously there's a need for it, so.
Management, then you need direction from the council as far as a motion to.
Well, yes, I need direction, I guess. I would suggest, and I'll let the town attorney if he wants to weigh in. The rock is not an issue. If you want to go ahead, I can go ahead and have the district do the rock. I guess the other work, if it, I can probably procure it through the district, even though we have no current contract with the district, but I guess if it's a one-time situation until we get our bids, our awarding of our bid work done, I could try to do it that way. I could ask Mr. Yowie to give me an estimate, make sure it meets the open market procedure. Would you agree that's probably a doable?
Yes.
With a motion, that's doable.
And one other question, because you brought up the comment more. And I can't speak for the district, but Mr. Yowie can. I was under the assumption that basically they were going to do it for free just to solve a problem, in other words, but you would have to clarify that through him. So in other words, rather than asking for a price, just clarify that I had the understanding that to eliminate the problem while we're going through the process, you know, there would be no cost to the residents, because they pay assessments just like everybody else.
I'll coordinate that with him.
I make a motion that you do such as we've outlined, rock, the clearing of debris out of the drainage ditch, and if bush hogging is available to enhance that, those other two steps, that also, but if nothing else, we get that road widened.
Second.
Roll call, please. Any other public comments? Roll call, please.
Jerome,
Yes.
Liang,
Yes.
and Michael.
Yes.
Approved, 3-0. Alright, moving on to number 9. I'm guessing this is Jim's subject.
Yeah, this was my item, and I want to comment on it, but we'll put it on the meeting when we have 5 of us here, but we're talking about moving forward, and one of the steps should include, one of the things we need to address is speed hump design. I presented options before, we talked a little bit about it. I think the council felt it was too early. We didn't have any roads to apply it to, and, you know, the district is still the one having to make that call. I think I'll bring this back to the council with the same suggested roadways that we had as an example. And we also can talk about not only the speed hump, which is more of a flatter, wider surface, based on what we see that works very well around us and the communities around us, but to include discussion about frequency, how often, what's the separation between them, which in my mind should be at least twice as far as they are now, possibly 3 times. The first application may very well be, Ryan, if we get folks to do that repair work, we would put probably 2 there, and at least for 1 or 2 people, they would say, please put speed humps in there. It might be that we should put more because it's just a high cut-through road, and that might be merit a modification to our standard. But the idea of having a standard, having it so far between, and the spec on that is what we should talk about in the future, and I'll bring it back, but it reminds the council members that are here in the town that we'll give them a road to go look at again, a road to drive over again, and say this is one that we ought to consider, and then talk a little bit about distance between. One of the things that some of those on the water control district and myself is a difference agreement on speed humps. But we still can go to dinner together and talk about it. The issue will be, for roads that we actually do the work on, we're going to set the standard. I would like to, at some point, the Water Control District consider what we are looking at or have adopted and comment on it for us to just get feedback from. But my perspective is this. When you have a dirt road, which we have on 4 segments that were open, there was absolutely no speed limit enforceable with any kind of device other than our friendly sheriff's office. And they were not positioned on every road all the time. So when you Ojum the road, the first thing that you've accomplished is a safer stopping surface. How many times I can't tell you, driving down a dirt road, passing a car coming the other way, I'm on the canal. The other car doesn't have any sense of what they should be doing. They can't read or they don't care. and I have to try to come to a stop. And on those roads that are graded such as they are, if I hit my brakes, I will pass into their path. It's natural. Gravity pulls me there. So from a safety perspective, non-Elgin roads are the least safe road we have, dirt roads specifically. You add Elgin, you can stop. You can stop at intersections, you can even stop when another car is trying to pass you that it shouldn't be. You add speed humps, you add another layer of speed control. But it does not change the fact that dirt roads, there is unlimited speed. When you add Elgin, you've been layered of safety. You add speed humps, now you have to, I think, consider how much safety you're trying to add, because you're already enhanced them 100%. And that's one of the areas that we disagree on in our conversations. That's one thing I made, the point I wanted to make was, I think we've accomplished a lot within Elgin Circles. And I believe Mr. Gerald, Vice Mayor, Darrell, will tell you that he knows he can stop on Elgin roads a lot better than dirt roads. But I'll put it off to bring up to May, just put it on the agenda for May, if you would want.
Brian, any comments? Just a quick comment. Another thing I'd like to see is maybe a little direction here. But we've been talking about speed humps for a long time, but yet I don't think we've got any contractors that can tell us that they can make us a speed table like the ones that were done on Sycamore, the ones that were done on 44th. Sycamore is the perfect ones as far as I'm concerned. No matter what you're driving, you can run 30 miles an hour. The police or the fire have to run a little faster they can. But it doesn't matter whether it's a car, a dump truck, fire truck, you can go 30 miles over those speed tables. So what bothers me is that we don't have, we've been talking over a year now, we don't have a contractor lined up that will say, I can come in and I can give you speed tables, like Sycamore. And I know with the Ojum people, the one thing they stressed is when they put the Ojum down, you can't work a speed hump in there. So that's one thing I'd be looking at when people bid on. And I've been told by management that there's more people than just 2 people out there doing Ojum now. So I'm going to expect more bids on the roads. But my one concern is not putting the humps like we've got right now, but putting professional speed tables in. Now, if that meant that there's a drying process, and I'm not an asphalt person, but I'm throwing something out there. If there's a time process where the people that put the Ojum down say, hey, we put the Ojum down, a month later you can put professional speed tables in, but you've got to wait that long, then I say that we need to learn as much as we can about it. And we need to do it the right way when we start doing these roads. And that's back to F Road. We've had many residents complain about taking the old ones out and putting new ones in. That's as far as I'll go with speed humps, but I support Jim. I know why the Water Control District did it, and I know that they're willing to accept better speed humps if we take the liability. And for us to punish our residents because other people want to speed on our roads, I'll change my idea about that. We will hire PBSO and we'll just make some money off tickets. So, and the Ojum, if you want to know how much traction you get on the Ojum road compared to the dirt, take a bicycle with 20 speed and ride on the Ojum road, and then you get out here and ride on concrete or ride on pavement. It's like the Ojum is wanting to slow you down, and I've experienced that myself. And there's a lot of things you can do to find out how much traction you have on that Ojum road compared to asphalt or compared to concrete. Thank you.
One other comment. I talked to some of those Ojum folks who were putting in the road, putting in the speed humps, and those who were doing it, I got a little different flavor that yes, they could do tables. So, but we also learned that that was the first time they had done speed humps in all their other work, although they were, I guess, chosen for a number of things, but speed humps were not one of them. So I think there's probably a much better answer, which is why I kept bringing this up.
All right. Any public comments on speed humps? All right. Closing comment. Any public comments? Frank?
Howard's coming.
Frank Carroll, Marcel Boulevard. Just to give everybody perspective when we were talking tonight and an overview of the public we talked about. One thing is that on Marcella, people weren't really too thrilled to sign any kind of legal document, even though they knew they weren't going to lose the road, the right to the road, or going to shrink their acreage or whatever, until we ended up getting an attorney coming out. He said, do you all realize that everybody on this road is responsible for this road, not the little section in front of your house, the whole road. And that means that if somebody gets an accident all the way down the east end of Marcella, the guy all the way down at the west end of Marcella who has nothing to do with that, still gets as party to a lawsuit. And that's what happens on these roads. That if somebody gets into an accident, a reasonably competent attorney that would file a claim would file against everybody's homeowner's insurance company on that entire road. And then that way, instead of just the two people that actually would own that section of road there or maintain it, they would end up getting a lot more money. And we asked the attorney, well, what happens if we go ahead and put a sign up that says residents only or guests or something like that? He goes, doesn't make a difference. He says the only way you can stop it from happening is to go ahead and form a homeowners association and gate it off, which then you get into a lot more expense. And homeowner associations, he said, easily can evolve. And we've seen this before in communities where people do homeowner associations just for the road, and then they morph into lawns, and then they morph into painting and all that. And by that time, now you must move into the city. And he says people didn't expect that to happen, but people move out and other people move in and all that. And he says, or the easiest way to do it is just to go ahead and do like the county's asking you to do, is basically you sign the easement over, which includes, by the way, the canal, and this is on Bryant, or on Compton and Marcella, which does include the canal, or the drainage ditch. And if you were to give it to a municipality for the right to come in and maintain it and to do work on it, you would relieve yourself of liability. And you won't believe how many people right then and there were signing that paper to get it done, because they did not realize that that is something that can happen. And that's something that people don't have to worry about on the district roads, because the district assumes all liability. But on the non-district roads or town roads, people need to realize that that's part of it. If they don't want to sign it over, that they could be a part of your lawsuit, even if it doesn't happen at their end of the road. Like 161st is a very good example. Long road, an accident happens for whatever reason, you could be brought into a lawsuit, even though it happened all the way down at the north end of the road. So, something for us to look at, and I know that all it takes is for one road to get sued and wind up in court or whatever, or just go through all this stuff and then have to, I think they're going to be more willing to go ahead and get this done. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Town attorney, comments?
No comments.
I had a question for town attorney. Not that easy, Mike. We didn't go over the item that you had drafted for Brian. You touched on the concept that whatever we did, whatever somebody signed, it would not reduce their acreage calculation, if you will. Is that what's included? That's our approach in this document that you...
This document doesn't address that issue. But where that will have to be addressed is when we're looking at the ULDCs, is provide for a direction in the code that says when calculating, area for compliance with the sections of the ULDC, that any portion of a roadway adjacent to or that was formerly on this property, quote unquote, I'm not saying it correctly, but that will be included in the acreage calculation so that you don't lose it. So it can't be seen that if it's going to be dedicated 0.1 acres and that puts you down to 9.9. Well, the code would say that you count that 0.1 for purposes of the ULGC, so you don't lose those rights under our code. That has to be done through a code section. I think that's on Mark's list to make sure it goes to the ULGCs. And if we get that concern because it's not in there yet, we can bring that back to you and have you adopt a motion for zoning in progress to make that declaration. We can maybe at that point provide something in there, but I don't think it's not.
have to make it
focus
clear.
on it, make sure that that's something that we keep abreast of, so it doesn't become a stumbling block to getting this other done. But if you were to recap what we are doing in this document, it is an easement statement. I'm going to read the last part of it. It suggests title, easement,
To the road itself, not to the property.
to the road.
Yeah.
So if they, I mean, my way of looking at it is somebody's given up the rights to put a road down, and we're coming behind them, in the case of Brian, we're coming behind them and saying, well, you've already done this because you already have it paved. We're asking you to do the same thing, because our footprint of the road is the same that's already there.
Correct.
Okay, that's, thank you.
No comments, good night.
Make it quick. I thank everybody for being patient with me tonight. It's been a good experience. Thank you for hanging in there. And be careful, don't fall asleep at the wheel when you go home. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Meeting adjourned. Next meeting will be May 7th, 7 p.m. on Tuesday.
So that might actually help.
Susan,
If there's-
is this yours?
Yes.